Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Presentation Skills 101 on this particular Sunday. Welcome to everybody. I'm seeing a lot of good mornings in the box. Everybody seems to be in a cheerful mood as we get started. We're at 94 participants right now. I'm hoping we touch the 200 mark. It almost feels like a cricket match where we're going to score runs. Okay, so let's dive straight into the subject because, as usual, there is a hell of a lot to cover, and because this is a topic of extreme importance to one and all. So there's lots to cover, and I want to dive straight into this particular topic. Okay, so first, just a few ground rules. All of y'all can read this particular slide. Okay, so the cameras and microphones have been disabled. Please type yes in the chat box if you can see the presentation and you can hear the facilitator clearly. Please type yes in the chat box if that is the case. This is going to be a 90-minute long session. I will take questions at the end of each module, and at the end of the class, like you know, at the end of the 90-minute mark, we have a special session which is called after class, where whatever questions can't get answered during this 90-minute framework, we take those questions there. So each and every person gets a question to an answer to their question. That's the after class is another 45 minutes at least is what we do. Use the to ask questions, ensure that you're using the Q&A section. So I will take questions only from the Q&A section. If you look below, you'll be able to find the Q&A section, and we're going to use the chat box basically for any exercises I may ask you to do or any responses that I may want from you. So that is going to be the use of the chat box, while all the questions need to come in the Q&A session. At the end of this particular session, we have assessment link. We have a little assessment that's going to happen, which is in the 90 minutes, where if you get 70% plus, you are going to get a lovely certificate from Work Better Training, which will acknowledge the fact that you cleared your assessment and will acknowledge the fact that you have been trained on the subject of presentation 101. Right, so please wait back for that particular assessment. Please get that assessment because it's very important if you attended this session on a Sunday morning to get the certificate as well. Okay, now before we proceed on to today's subject, I just want to throw light on the fact that this is one of five classes that we're going to have on the subject of presentation skills, right? Because from our 10 years of experience, 10, 12 years of being in this particular industry, we know that this is what one of people's biggest needs is. A lot of them want stuff around presentations, public speaking, because we have to make so many presentations of late, right? So we have 5 whole classes on this. Today is just one of those 5 classes on presentation skills, right? The next class that we have, I don't know the exact date. You all can check it on the calendar once you'll become members. But the one class that we have is on how to structure your content, right? When you're putting your presentation together. We have another topic on dealing with nervousness, because that is a big issue that a lot of people have. So I'm not going to be taking a lot of questions in this area of how to deal with nervousness, because we have a whole separate class for that. We have a class on handling tough audiences, right? So how do you handle audiences that ask a lot of questions, that are very, very distracted? Again, we're not going to cover that in detail today. And the last one, after you sort out these 3 things, how do you become a presentation pro, right? How do you really start wowing your audience and meeting your objective, right? So these are the other 4 classes that we have through the year. Today's class is in a way an introduction to the subject of presentation skills, the first class of these 5 classes. It's an introduction on this subject, and we are going to cover a few basics on what needs to be done. We're going to try to address a few common misunderstandings that people have around this subject. A lot of it is misconceptions that people have lived with all their lives because they haven't had somebody good to kind of throw light or train them on this particular subject. So they have a lot of misconceptions around it. We're going to clear all of those things. So in a way, this class is like the 101 is the essentials of presentations. Okay, Just a minute, guys. Arunima, if anybody can't hear me, I'm not going to be opening the chat box all the time. So if anybody can't hear me, just let me know about it. Okay. Now, let's go on to defining this subject to start with, right? So what is a presentation? A presentation is, at least from the context of this workshop that we're doing, this class that we're doing, a presentation is nothing but one-to-many communication. Okay, that's a good way of looking at it. A presentation is nothing but your ability to communicate ideas to a group of people, and that could be done through when the group is sitting in front of you. Okay, it can be done even in settings like this where you're doing a Zoom call and you're addressing a lot of people. The presentations is nothing but one-to-many communication. You know, previously, before this word presentation came in, we would often call this subject, probably 15, 20 years back, we'd call this subject public speaking, right? Where you need to actually articulate your view, or articulate your ideas, or articulate your standpoint to many people who are either sitting in front of you or you're addressing it virtually, right? So that is what we're trying to get better at, because it is a very, very important skill. Okay, now as we get started, the first exercise that I have, and for this I want each one of you all to use the chat box, which is there, and the question to you is, why are presentation skills so important to your career? Right, that's what I want to know from all of you all, and I want you all to use the chat box in it, and for this answer I want you all to come up with any 3 to 5 points that you enter in the chat box there. Okay, you have 2 minutes to do that. Your time starts now. I have a lot of people giving me answers, saying to share information effectively. Guys, I know that it is to share information effectively, but that's not really my question. My question is, how are presentation skills important to your career? And another way to kind of look at this particular question is to ask yourself, if you're not good at presentations or making presentations, how does it impact your career badly, right? So I don't really want generic answers of saying to communicate ideas to people efficiently. That's what we know presentations are. My question to you is, what is going to be the result if you are bad at making presentations? How does it impact your career negatively? Or if you're good at presentations, how does that impact your career positively? So please think about those answers and put them up in the chat box, and not just generic answers on that subject, very specific to you. Okay, now a few people are giving answers which are more in line. We need to convey our points. Okay, Shibu has put his points across in a nice way. Okay, some good answers. Yes, some good answers. I want you all to keep thinking, how does it positively or negatively impact me or my life? I want you to, if I'm not good at this subject, how is it going to impact my life negatively? Okay, some good answers. I want everyone, when you're up using the chat box, even read some of the other answers so that you'll know what other people on this particular, in this particular class think about this subject. Okay, some good answers. Thank you very much for participating on a Sunday morning. Very, very happy to see the amount of answers that have come in. So why is presentation skills so important to your career? First of all, I think if anybody is worked in corporate India, or anybody has even, I think, anything above 5 years of experience, by now they have realized that what the importance of this particular subject is. They possibly understand the importance of communication skills, right, on a day-to-day basis, but they also realize the importance of presenting well. And a lot of people, when I do workshops with them, a lot of people will say this thing where they say, one of the reasons why I didn't make progress in my career is that I do very good work. Yeah, I know I do very good work, यार पर मेरा ना presentation ठीक से नहीं होता. I can't present myself properly. I can't present the work properly. I can't communicate the work properly to people, right? They always, I do good work, but I can't present it properly, and that kind of holds them back in their career. And the problem is, instead of fixing this particular problem, they keep complaining about this particular problem, and they keep praying in a way that somehow the management should see their work without them having to present that work properly to them. And I think the reality of the matter is, there's a very nice thought that says, right, deal with the world not as you would like it, but as the world is, right? And the reality of how the world is each and every person has to do very good work, has to bring in the results, but each and every person, in if you're working, needs to also be good at presenting that work to other people. And those other people could be different stakeholders. It could be your colleagues, it could be your senior management, it could be your vendors, it could be your customers, right? In a way, you think about it this way: you may have a great product, but even if you have a great product, and if you can't present that product well to other people and your potential customers are not going to know that you have a great product, right? They can't dream about the fact that you have a good product, right? So even if you have something great, it becomes extremely important for you to be able to present it well. And therefore, each one of you should take this particular subject very, very seriously, and actually get better at this particular subject, right? The second reason why presentation skills, in my mind, is very important to each one of y'all is that the more senior you become in the hierarchy in your particular company, a lot of leaders have said this to me, right? They've said, my entire job as a senior in this company, above middle management in this company, my entire job is either I'm giving presentations to people or I'm attending presentations, right? So it's literally the whole day, that's what I do: give presentations or attend presentations. Because the more senior you become, typically the lesser time you have, right? You're crunched for time, and the more the requirement for you to go out and speak one to many, right? Because you don't have the time to address things one on one, so you have to speak one to many. So if any one of y'all aspire to lead a team, if any one of y'all really aspire to go to the senior levels of management, your ability to communicate effectively one to many, your ability to communicate to a group, becomes very, very important. And by and large, I'm sure your experience will say the same thing, that 8 out of 10 people that go to the very top, I'm not saying 100%, but 8 out of 10 people that go to the very top of the corporate hierarchy, you will see that they have the ability to communicate very well, and you will see that they in turn have the ability to present their ideas, thoughts extremely well to people, right? So these are the few reasons why it is. You, number one, you may be doing good work, but if you can't present that work properly, you're not going to shine in your organization. And that's just what the truth is, right? You can't change that particular fact of the matter. Number two, if you want to go, if you want to become a senior, if you want to get to leadership positions within your organization, you'll have to get good at addressing people one to many, right? That is the other reason, and that is the reason why presentation skills as a topic is so important to y'all, right? So if all of y'all, if y'all agree with me, give me a big yes in the chat box, so that I know we're on the same page as far as this particular issue is concerned, right? So big yes in the chat box, please. Very good. Thank you very much for all the enthusiasm and the big yeses from everyone. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, now before I move on to this subject, I just thought of something that I wanted to share with you, right? So this was, I think, close to 5 or 6 years back, right? And I was doing a presentation skills workshop where we had 15 people sitting in the room with me, and I was kind of training them on how to get better on this subject. We were dealing with one of India's oil and gas majors, right? We were dealing with them, and these were the senior most people in that oil and gas major. So we had somebody from the maintenance team, right? The head of maintenance who kind of takes care of the entire oil and gas plant. He was actually running me through his presentation, right? So he was actually making the presentation to me for feedback on that particular presentation, and for me to give him tips on how to do better at it. And he had made such a terrible presentation, to be honest, right? So he was presenting it badly. The contents of his presentation were very, very bad, very, very unstructured. But after spending close to 20 minutes listening to his presentation very carefully and asking him a few questions, I realized that this particular gentleman had done a fantastic job in the last 1 year, in the work that he did, right? So he had brought about a saving of over 20-25 crores, which was a big deal for that particular company, that he had brought about that particular saving. However, the way he was presenting and the content of his presentation was so poorly done that the audience at the end of that particular presentation didn't even know that this gentleman had led to close to a 25 crore rupee saving for that company in 1 year, right? That's how badly he was presenting. He had done great work, but he didn't even care to present those figures properly. And it's not like he didn't want to, right? He just didn't know how to. And then at the end of it, I asked him, because that's a presentation he had made a month back. I asked him to the extent, I said, do all the people in your peer group, do all the people in this organization actually know that you have clearly brought about a 25-30 crore saving for your company in 1 year? Do they know about it because of the work that you and your team has done? And the answer to that was no, they don't know about it. And now he, in his mind, started thinking, oh, nobody's acknowledging my work. Nobody's actually, taking what I'm doing seriously. And I just turned that around and I said, no, please don't blame your peers for it. Please don't blame your management for it. You are such a poor presenter that they have no idea of the good work that you've done, although that you spent 1 year doing that good work with your team, right? So it's not their fault, it's your fault, right? That you are not presenting the matter well, right? And that's an example in a way of what most people end up doing at the workplace, right? So that's why it is such a important skill for us. Now, so we've just discussed the importance of presentation. Now, this is a slide that is extremely important. So I want all of you all to pay very close attention to this particular slide. There are 5 points here. Okay, they're going to come one by one. But these 5 points, in a way, are going to clear a lot of your misconceptions around the topic of business presentations, right? So I want you all to pay careful attention. If you even understand these 5 points, right, if you actually understand them, this alone is going to be enough for you to start making better presentations. Okay, so pay careful attention. Now, the first point, the truth about business presentations is that most people in the room are too preoccupied with other things when you're speaking, right? That's the first truth of business presentations. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that if you are going into a room to present to people, the audience is always going to be preoccupied with something else, right? Nobody enters a room thinking, I'm going to go for this presentation and really pay a lot of attention, right? People rarely enter any room from that point of view, right? Because everybody is so busy with their own work, right? Everybody has got some fire somewhere or the other in their personal and professional life that they have to douse, that they have to put off, that when they're coming for a presentation, more often than not, they're not fully there, right? They're preoccupied with their own thing, right? However, when you, the presenter, are going up to present, you in a way feel that the entire world is looking at you. You feel that the entire world is focused on you, where that is not the case, right? Most people, when they come to attend a presentation, are thinking when they're going to get out of that presentation and go home, right? That's what their thought is. They're least concerned about anything else. They just wanted to get over and done with and move, right? So that's the first thing that all of us should remember when we're going to make a presentation, that people are preoccupied with their own things, right? Now, I often share this kind of example here. I used to work in a company called L'Oreal. That was my first job, and the first presentation that I ever had to make. I just joined the company, but for some reason, the MD of L'Oreal was a very, very senior person, was sitting in that particular room, right? He was part of my audience. And this particular MD he was a very jovial, fun guy otherwise, right? He was always in high spirits. But in that particular morning, he didn't look too happy, right? He looked very, very grim. And I was making a presentation, and when I was making a presentation, I was looking at his face, and he looked so grim and almost angry. And I got really, really worried, right? And I started, of course, getting more and more nervous, and I started screwing up my presentation that I was making, right? And somehow I got through with it. It was a 20-minute presentation. He didn't ask me any questions or nothing of that sort. But because of that particular nervousness, I did a very bad job while presenting. So over and done with. In the evening, I had to go into his cabin to get a signature of his on something that I needed. And when I entered his cabin, again, he looked kind of grim. He didn't look too happy. He didn't look in the best of spirits. He had the same expression that he had when I was making a presentation in the morning. So we had an equation where we could actually talk to him, right? So I asked him, I said, sir, is everything good? Are you feeling well? So he was like, he blurted out saying, he said, Swapnil, what do I tell you, right? I got my son's 10th standard results this morning, early morning, and my son is fared so poorly in his exams. He's done so badly, right? So the thought that came into my head was, in the morning when he actually entered the room as an audience to attend my presentation, it's not like he was really concentrating on my presentation. He was preoccupied with some personal problem of his, and his facial expression in a way was a result of that particular preoccupation that he had. It wasn't really about me, right? So a lot of times when people are going to come in the audience, know that they're going to be preoccupied with their own things, right? Another case point here for you. Say if you're making a presentation and somebody's on their laptop, listen, as an audience, for you to be on a laptop when somebody is presenting to you is not a very respectful thing to do. Okay, there's no doubt about that. If you're the audience, you shouldn't be looking into your phone, you shouldn't be looking into your laptop. There's no doubt that that is behavior which is not acceptable. However, if you are the presenter and somebody does look at his laptop or does look into his phone, please don't think that you are screwing up, you are doing something bad. It's because of you. Don't make it all about you, right? It's probably because something else has come which is much more urgent that you don't know about on the personal or professional side, right? So this is the first kind of truth of business presentation, that most people in the room are too preoccupied with other things. Okay, now this is the second truth of business presentations. People remember very little from presentations made, right? Just very, very little. Now, what do I mean by this? um, I'll give you an example of this, right? I'll give you this example in jest. um, think of even if I make this presentation to you for an hour and a half, right? And at the end of that hour and a half, if you don't make a lot of notes, and if I ask you after an hour and a half of talking, if I ask you, what are the few things that you picked up from this particular presentation? After an hour and a half of talking, you will barely be able to pick 2 or 3 things, right, out of what you learned from this particular presentation. And there's nothing which is wrong with you. This is how all human beings are. From whatever presentations are made, our mind picks up very, very little from it, right? And a good way to look at how our minds are more like sieves. I don't know the Hindi, what's the Hindi word for sieve? You don't know? Okay, where we put tea and coffee, sieve, right? So our minds are more like sieves with little holes in them, than they are like buckets, right? So when you put a lot of stuff in that sieve, most of it comes down, and a little bit of it remains on top. And that's exactly how our minds are, right? Most of it just goes and very little remains in our brains, right? So most people remember very, very little from presentations. Now, if you don't trust me, try this fun experiment yourself, right? So if you make a presentation, say to your colleagues, whenever you all get back to office, or over Zoom for that matter, it doesn't matter where you all are doing the presentations. If you make a presentation to your colleagues, and you have like a very close friend of yours who's part of the audience. After you make that particular presentation, after say 5 or 10 minutes of you making that presentation, just go and tap on your friend's shoulder and ask him saying, hey, what did I say in this particular presentation? Can you actually tell me what I discussed? And I can tell you, if you made an hour-long presentation, he'll barely be able to tell you one or two things, right, from what you said in that presentation. That's how much he remembers from that presentation, right? Now, if you ask him, if you ask your friend, say after 4 hours about the presentation, right? You made the presentation in the morning, you ask him by noon, you say, hey, remember in the morning I made a presentation for you and your colleagues. What did I say in that presentation? If you ask him that question, he'll barely be able to tell you one thing. Okay. And the third instance is, if you made a presentation in the morning and say, if you speak to your colleague at 5 o'clock in the evening and you ask him the question, hey, I made a presentation in the morning. What did I say in that presentation? Your colleague will actually ask you, did you really make a presentation? You'll be like, mujhe yaad bhi nahi hai. I don't even remember that you made a presentation this morning, right? Because so much has happened since morning that I don't even remember the fact that you made a presentation in the morning, right? That's how concerned I am with my life. I'm not really concerned with your life, right? So the truth of the matter is, people pick up very little from presentations made, right? That's just the way the human mind is. Okay. So that's why, just a few of the things that you need to do in your presentation. You need to ensure that you keep the points limited, because there's a very nice quote that says, the more I tell you, the less you're going to remember. Right. So you really need to identify what's most important and just focus on those things. It's very important for you to structure your presentation properly, which we're going to learn in another class, so people know exactly what you've said in that particular presentation. It's extremely important for you to constantly remind them, through summaries at the end of the section, on what you said, for even something to stick in that human brain of your audience, right? So this is the second big truth of business presentations, right? Now, the third big truth of business presentations is, people have very limited time, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of people that have a lot of time also believe that they have limited time, right? Because all of us today can stay busy by Facebooking, Instagramming, being on the news all the time, indulging ourselves in stupid discussions around stuff we have no idea about. So we can always find ourselves busy doing something or the other, checking email, right? So you don't even need to be really busy to feel that you're busy, right? But most people have very, very limited time at their disposal, right? But if you think of it, when we're actually making a presentation, we don't think like that. When we're actually making a presentation, हम हमेशा सोचते हैं इस presentation में और क्या डाल सकते हैं. That is our thought, which is often there, right? What else can I put in the presentation? And your audience often wants you to remove stuff from presentations, right? So that's what your audience wants. Typically, if you're going to present to your colleagues, especially if you're in office, I'm sure even over Zoom, and again, one of your close friends is part of the audience, I think the first question that every close friend of mine has ever asked me, he always asks the question, I'm sure the same is the case in your case, the same is the thing in your case, they'll ask you, slide kitne hai? How many slides are there, right? And it doesn't matter what answer you give people, right? So if you say there are 50 slides, they'll be like, hey, 50, 25 nahi ho sakte kya? Right? If you say 25 slides, they'll say 25 slides, can't they be 11? So whatever the amount of slides that you put out, your audience always wants half of them, right? That's a good rule to keep in mind. They always want half the presentation. But while making a presentation, we're never thinking like that. While making a presentation, we're always thinking, what else can I put in this particular presentation? How else can I make it longer, bigger, when your audience wants just the bang opposite of that, okay? So one of the things that we are going to do in this series of 5 classes that we're going to do is, our objective is to try to get you to think more like the audience and less like the presenter, right? That is one of the things that we want to do, because the minute you start thinking from an audience's point of view for whom you're making the presentation, the more you start thinking from the audience's point of view and not from the presenter's point of view, you are going to do a far better job of presenting. But we are often stuck in the presenter's mind, although 90% of the time we are the audience, but somehow when we're making a presentation, we rarely think about the audience, and we keep thinking about ourselves and all our worries, all our apprehensions, all our desperations. We are looking at all of those things, and therefore we're not paying enough attention to the audience while doing it, right? So I want all of us to start thinking a little more like the user, a little more like the consumer, a little more like the audience, and less as the person presenting. I hope that thought made sense to you. If it made sense to you, give me a big yes in the chat box. I want to see that we're on the same page. Yeah, I think this is resonating. Please, when you're address all panelists and attendees, all panelists and attendees. There is a 2 in your chat box which has all attendees and panelists. Amazing. I'm happy to see that we're on the same page on this particular thing. Is okay. Now, okay, so this is another very, very big truth of business presentation, which is that everyone is nervous, right? Even people that you think are not nervous about making presentations are very, very nervous, right? Now, you need to listen carefully for you to understand what I mean. I am somebody whose job is to present, right? As a teacher, I am presenting all the time to different audiences. Although I present every day, so in this kind of a session that I'm doing right now, I can't lie to you, I'm not nervous at all, right? And in most kind of rooms that I go to, I'm not nervous at all, because I've been doing this for the past 10, 12 years. And because I've been doing it so often, I don't really get nervous anymore. However, if I have to go and say present in some forum that in my mind I find prestigious, or in my mind I think that particular forum is of huge importance, right? Where I've been called to speak, before I go on to stage, although I do this almost every day, before I go on stage, I will still be nervous, right, about that, because I may not be nervous in this situation because I've done it so often, but when I'm put in another situation, even though I've done this so often, I will still feel nervous, right? A lot of your leaders that often you find as being very, very confident when they're dealing with you, when they're when they're presenting with you, they're very, very confident, and you're thinking, man, you know, I'm the only guy who gets nervous, or I'm the only person that gets nervous while presenting. And look at my leader, how well he's presenting. He never gets nervous. The same thing with him. He's probably so used to presenting in that situation. He's probably so used to presenting to you that he doesn't get nervous anymore in that particular situation. But if you take him out of that situation, and if you put him in a situation where, say, he's in front of the shareholders of the company, or he's in some very, very other important forum where he's supposed to present, he's going to be feeling nervous as well, right? Because feeling nervous when you're presenting to people is a very human thing. So I don't want any of y'all, we have close to 215 people on a Sunday morning attending this session, right? So I don't want any of the 215 people feeling at any point of time when you need to present. And if you feel nervous, I don't want you feeling at any point of time thinking, oh, I'm the only person that feels nervous. How do I feel nervous? I shouldn't be feeling nervous. No, 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 no. Everybody feels nervous, right? I often tell people, if you're going to go and if you need to present in an important forum and you don't feel nervous, chances are that you're dead and your ghost is presenting there, right? Because as long as you're alive, every time you present in a forum, you are going to feel that little bit of nervousness. And I know from whatever research I've read that a little bit of nervousness is extremely important also for you to perform better, right? Because you start taking your presentation a lot more seriously. So that little bit of nervousness is very, very important. But if that nervousness blows out of proportion, that's not a good thing for you all, right? And that's why we have a separate class just to deal with nervousness as an issue, right? We put something exactly for you there. Okay, so everybody is nervous. I want you all to know that, which is a big truth, right? And the last truth of presentations is this, right? Everybody can become good at making presentations. Everybody can be good at public speaking, right? So this is something that I want everybody to know. Again, you may think I'm just saying this as a form of encouragement. So I want to tell you a couple of things around this, right? For years, I've been doing this particular workshop, and when you go through all 5 classes of this and you follow what we tell you to do, I can assure you that very, very soon you will become a much better presenter. Right now, listen carefully. Each and every person is naturally better at certain things, right? And some things come to you a little more naturally, and some things don't come to you a little more naturally. Now, what do I mean by that? The 200 odd people attending this session, I'm sure for a lot of y'all, for a few of y'all, numbers, right? Or maths or numbers or calculation, those are things that come to your mind very, very easily. It's not that you had to do any other special practice for it, right? Ever since you were a kid, you were comfortable with numbers. Somebody like me, I'm not comfortable with numbers. I've never been comfortable with numbers, right? That's not something that comes to me naturally. Of course, I had to learn it, because if I had to run a business, I had to learn it to ensure that I am effective at it to a certain degree. I'm no expert at it, right? But that's something that came to a lot of you all naturally. It didn't come to me naturally. So exactly like this, on this topic of presentation, probably the ability to communicate well, the ability to present well comes naturally to a few people, and of course they need to work on it to make it better. And for a few people it may not be that natural, right? For them to present well, for them to stand in front of people, it may not be that natural. I am acknowledging that. But irrespective of which category you fall in, if you feel it comes naturally, or if you don't feel it comes naturally, the truth of the matter is presentation skills is a skill like anything else. It's exactly like if you've learned how to swim, a lot of y'all were natural at swimming, which means you went and within 2 or 3 classes, you got the hang of swimming and you learned how to swim, right? Very, very quickly. 2 or 3 classes it took. For a lot of y'all, it probably took 10 classes, right? To get better at swimming, right? For some people it took 2, for some people it took 10. However, both people at the end of it could learn how to do it, and both people could do it fairly well. The same thing is true in presentation. For some people, they may pick it up a little earlier. For some people, they may pick it up a little later, right? But all of us can get good at presentations if we put in the work. However, none of us are going to get good at presentations if we don't put in the work, right? What happens with most people is, if I give you the swimming example, most people quit. If you quit the class in the 3rd class, right, and don't wait till the 10th class, and then you complain about not knowing how to swim, the problem is not the swimming pool, the problem is not the water, the problem is not the swimming coach, the problem is you, because you're a quitter. You quit after the 3rd class. You would have gotten better after the 10th one, because you kept looking at that guy who was a natural at swimming, who got better at with 3 classes, and you said, how am I not good at swimming? Look at him, he picked it up in 3 classes. No, 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 you and him are different. Every human mind is as different as every human face, right? So you had to wait till the 10th class, but you didn't wait for it. And that's what's happened with most of y'all. That's the reason why y'all have not improved this skill of presenting well, right? Because whether it comes to you naturally or not, you need to put in the effort. And if you put in the effort, there will be no stopping you from becoming a good presenter. Again, I'm not talking about, you don't need to reach the efficiency and effectiveness of presenting like a Barack Obama or a Modi or most of these world leaders that need to public speak and present every hour of the day. You don't need, I'm not saying that you will become like them, but you can definitely become a big, a very big success in your corporate life and present very well in that particular context. So if you agree with me, if you think I'm making sense, please type a big yes in the chat box so that I know that we're on the same page. Thank you. Thank you. Makes sense, right? Ramnath is saying make a little progress every day. Absolutely. That's the key. You never jump into the pool for the first time and become a swimming pro all of a sudden, right? If you want to get good at swimming, it's the effort that you need to put in every day. If you have children for that matter, and if you send them for to play badminton, you don't expect your child to become a badminton pro all of a sudden, right? It's going to take some time for him to get better. It's going to take those classes. It's going to take that effort. Somehow when it comes to our children, we know what to do. Somehow when it comes to them, we have all the right advice to give, but very often we don't give ourselves that same advice, right? So yeah, if you agree with me, please, a big yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm just going to quickly look into the questions. We have one question that has come up. I'm going to address this particular question later, and I'm going to take this up later because now I want to go on with this particular presentation. Yeah, good. Some good answers. Yes. Good to see everybody participating. How many people are we? We're 215. Very good. Okay. Now, in this particular class, we are only going to focus our energies on three things. That's the things that we're going to focus on. That's it. Three things for this particular class. And then for the rest of the classes, we're going to continue our effort, right? So the three things that we're going to focus on in this particular class is this: the presentation mindset. That's something that we're going to focus on. A few thoughts and misconceptions that people have, I want to clear that. I'm sure through the truth of presentation, a few of them have already gotten cleared. Number two, we're going to focus on the presentation body language. If you all had attended the class that we did on body language and speaking, we covered this, but we're going to get into a little more detail on specifically what your body language needs to be when you present. And the third one is we're going to discuss. The third one is a big one, huh? Delivering the presentation. There's a lot of stuff to be discussed there, and we're going to, of course, discuss it through all our classes. But we're going to give you a few important tips on delivering your presentation well, right? So there's a lot of things for you to take back from this thing. I hope all of you all have started this class with a notepad in your hand. We're going to send you a summary sheet, but you know that your own notes, as we tell our children, are far more important than anything else, right? So I hope that you're making copious notes during this particular presentation, right? So let's move on to topic number one here. Let's move on to the presentation mindset, right? Now, three thoughts here, right, in terms of the presentation mindset. I think the point 1A we just discussed to a fair degree. The only way you get better at making presentations is by making more of them, right? This is the one big mindset change that you need to bring. The only way any of y'all are going to get better at this subject is by making more presentations. You are never going to get good at presentations by avoiding presentations, and that's what we tend to do. Most of us hope to get better at presenting by avoiding presentations, right? That's hoping to get better at batting by avoiding batting, or hoping to get better at badminton by not playing badminton at all, right? You're never going to become a better batsman by just watching batting on TV, right? It's important for you to see how the good players play, but in the end, it's important for you to go on the field and actually play. Exactly like that. You're never going to get good at presentations if you just watch good speakers, if you just attend classes like this and never actually take the effort of doing it yourself. So there's a simple rule: the more you present, the better you're going to get, right? Okay, now, therefore, what each one of y'all need to do, and I want y'all to give this thought. We don't have enough time for y'all to put this on your chat box, but I really want y'all to give this some thought, is if you want to get good at presentations, you need to take every opportunity that you need to get. You need to take that particular opportunity to present, right? That's the only way you're going to get better at presentations. You need to literally seize every opportunity which is there, right? Nobody's going to come and give it to you. Okay, you need to seize those opportunities to present and public speak, and that could be in your personal life, or that could be in your professional life as well. And the thing to remember is, when you're trying to get good at something, you're not going to be very good at the start. And that's what the problem is. Most of us aren't good at presentations or public speaking. So towards the start of our journey of getting better, we're not good, and we give up very, very quickly. But we're not good at anything when we start, more often than not. If you're learning how to drive, the first few classes, you don't expect to just sit on the wheel and learn how to drive, right? You're not going to be good at it. You need to get through that period in order for you to get good at it. And most people, the reason why they never get good at presentations is because they hate the first 5, the first 10 times of them being so bad and people looking at them when they're so bad. So they avoid making presentations, and they never get better at it through a lifetime, although they know that the ability to communicate well is an important leadership skill. They know that, but they avoid it like a plague, right? So you're never going to get good at it until you do more of it. Know that there is no way around that particular point. That's the mindset that you need to go with. Number 2 mindset that you need to go with is, I need to create every opportunity that I have to make a presentation. Unless I create every opportunity to make a presentation, I'm not going to get good at it. Okay. Now, let me give you a little bit around this. Let's assume it's going to take you 30 presentations to actually become a presentation pro, right? 30 practice presentations to become a presentation pro. Let's assume that you seize every opportunity that you get to make a presentation, and you finish those 30 presentations within 2 years, right? So then within 2 years, you finish doing 30 presentations. So you're almost presenting more than once a month to people, right? So that's a lot of practice. So you finish doing those 30 presentations within a period of 2 years. As again, somebody that's going to avoid making presentations. So they'd probably make 2 presentations in a year, right? So now it's going to take them 15 years to get better. So one person seized every opportunity to make a presentation and made 30 presentations within 2 years. Another person avoided every chance of making a presentation and now will probably do 30 presentations in 8 or 10 years, right? So therefore, one guy gets better within 2 years, one guy gets better possibly after 10 years, because it's not even a concentrated effort towards it, right? And this is how we don't get good at presentations, right? So we need to change our mindset, and we need to make it a mindset of creating every opportunity. Now, what do I mean by create every opportunity, right? I'll give you a few tips because I don't have the time to question you here. Creating opportunities for yourself means that if there is within your organization, if there is any chance of, say, doing some training program, right, within your organization, because when you're training people, you're often talking to people one to many. There's a lot that you need to communicate. Volunteer to do any training work within your company, right, or any knowledge sharing work. Volunteer to do that. Put your hand up as, you know, I'd like to do a session on this. So let me give you an example. Maybe you learned a lot of things in your free time about COVID. Right now, you've done a lot of research around it, and maybe you're going to get back to work. So maybe you can volunteer and tell your organization that, listen, you know, I want to actually make a presentation to all my colleagues on what are the do's and don'ts when we get back to the workplace. Right? I've done a lot of study on that. Let me put a presentation together, and I would like to do that. So that now you're creating an opportunity for yourself to actually practice your presentation skills. Are you getting my point? Right? This is the way to do it. Now, if you and your boss, say, are going for some meeting to an important client or an important stakeholder, you know, be the one to ask your boss, saying, boss, can I present today? And maybe your boss will say no. The next time that you're going again, raise your hand and say, boss, can I try to present today? You'll say no. By the third or fourth time, you'll say, okay, present, right? Or you'll say, okay, present one part of it. I will present the other part of it. But if you're not actually going to raise your hand and ask him again and again and again, right, he's not going to give you those particular chances. So that's again a way of you creating an opportunity for you to present all the time, right? In your personal life, what are creating opportunities for you to present? Say if it's your child's birthday party, right, and you've invited a lot of your family people over. Maybe you make a small little speech. Please don't make a long speech and bore all the family members, right? We don't want long, boring speeches. I'm not talking about that. But maybe you get a little bit of public speaking practice by going up there on stage or whatever, going in front of everybody and saying a few words, probably for 5 to 8 minutes, right? And practicing there. If you're going to a child's school and there's something there where you need to kind of teach or speak in front of everybody, take that particular opportunity to do it, because the more and more and more you get onto a platform where people are looking at you, the more you will get used to it. And the more you get used to it, the better you will start doing it. But unless you start creating those opportunities, my friends, there is no way you're getting better at it. There is no way you're getting better at the subject of presentation just by coming for this particular workshop. No, that's the equivalent of thinking that you're going to get a great body just by paying for the gym, right? You don't. You have to put in the hard work yourself after that, after learning from the gym instructor what needs to be done, right? That's my favorite example. Okay, so the only way of getting better at making presentations is by making more of them. Now, point number 2, the right mindset. Most of our problem in life, not just presentations, is our constant focus on what are other people thinking about me, right? This is not just about presentation, but just in life. What are other people thinking about me? What is my aunt thinking about me? What is my uncle thinking about me? What is my aunt's dog thinking about me? Everybody worried about what everybody is thinking about you. And the fact of the matter is, nobody's thinking about you, right? Because nobody cares enough, right? They're busy thinking about themselves. They've got no time to think about you. Once in a while, because they have nothing else to talk about, they may talk about you, but that doesn't mean that they really care about you, right? And they're not constantly thinking about you. There's a very nice quote that says, in my 20s, I thought everybody was thinking about me. By the time I got to my 40s, I realized nobody was thinking about me. By the time I got to my 60s, I realized that most people were so busy thinking about themselves that they never really had the time to think about me, right? So the more constantly we're focused on what people are thinking about me, we are not going to be able to achieve anything even otherwise, but especially not in presentation, right? So the reason why most people are not good at making presentations because they're so focused on impressing people. They're so focused on saying that, "Arey, main hero lagna chahta hu. I want to be a hero or heroine in front of these people," right? And they're so focused on that. And from today onwards, my simple suggestion to you is stop focusing on impressing people, right? Stop focusing on creating some kind of a wow impact in front of them. Stop having this mindset that, people need to clap at the end of my presentation and that needs to happen. No, that is not going to happen. The only thing that you need to focus on is how do I get my message across to people in a very powerful, strong way, right? How do I get my message across to people? That's it. And concentrate on that particular message to get that across in a strong way. Do not put your energies towards trying to impress people, right? And the minute you shift your mind from trying to impress people to actually wanting to get your message across to people in a strong way, that itself is a big change in terms of your mindset towards making presentations. Okay, so that's a big one. I'm sure you all will have questions around each one of these things, and we're going to take up the questions after we're done with this. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A section and I will take them up at the end of this particular presentation, right? But if you are going to forget your own question, put it there, because like I mentioned, if we don't manage to cover your questions within this 90 minutes, we have a whole after class for you, right? Where we're going to spend 45 minutes just answering your questions, all the questions in for today's topic. The rest of the questions we'll take up in the other classes. Okay, so the second thing towards mindset is do not try to impress people. Focus on getting the message across to your audience, right? Because the minute you try to impress people, not going to work. Now, the third thing, very important point again. Okay, develop a mentality of work in progress versus this is a big moment. Okay, now listen very carefully. So when I typically ask people, and we're going to deal with this in detail in the class on how to deal with nervousness around presentation. When I typically tend to ask people, what makes you nervous? Why do you get so nervous around making presentations? Okay, so then they'll say, yeah, I'm worried about what people will think. I'll say, okay, you're worried about what? Who in specific are you worried about what they're going to think? And very often they'll be like, if I have my colleagues and especially my boss sitting, I'm very worried about, what he's going to think. I said, okay, how does it matter what he's going to think? Then they start thinking and then they say, how does it matter? Because if I present badly, maybe I'll get a bad appraisal. Okay, so basically a lot of our fears around presentation revolve around this idea of, oh, what are people going to think? But a lot of our fears revolve around this particular idea is how is making a bad presentation going to impact my career, right? So will I be giving the wrong impression? How will it impact my career? So that is one. And although people don't actively say it, that is a big kind of fear that they have, that if people discover that I'm a poor communicator, if people discover I'm a bad presenter, how does that have negative consequences for it, right? So what I end up telling people is this. You must know by now that at the workplace, 8 out of 10 people are poor presenters, right? So if you think you're a poor presenter, you're in the majority, 80%, right? Of people are poor presenters or not great presenters. So you're not the only person sailing in this particular boat. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you want to know how to do well in your career, how to get in great appraisal, we have a class for that specifically on how to get a great appraisal. But if you want to know how to get a great appraisal, it's not going to be based in terms of how you make one presentation or whether you screw up on one presentation during the year, right? You get a good appraisal or you do well in your career based on the effort and your ability to bring results consistently, right? So that is the key to career success, your ability to bring results consistently to your boss, to your company. That's how you make progress. It's not based on how you're going to make one presentation, right? So understand that one presentation that you make is not this big moment which is make or break, because every time you go to present, say if you're going to an important client, to present your thoughts on it, You can't go saying, oh, this is a make or break moment for you. That listen, even if you don't get that client, it's not like your company is going to collapse, or it's not like you are going to collapse or never have a job again in your life, right? So stop putting so much of pressure in that one moment on that one presentation, because the truth of the matter is no one presentation, however big you may think that presentation is, no one presentation is going to make or break your career. You may at that moment think that it will make or break your career, but it's not going to make or break your career. What is going to make your or break your career is your ability to get results consistently on a day-to-day basis, right? So that is the key, not how you make one presentation. Therefore, what your mindset needs to be towards presenting is you need to have a work in progress philosophy to presenting. Now, what that work in progress philosophy means is you need to acknowledge, if you think you're not a good presenter, you need to acknowledge that, okay, as I stand today, I am not the best presenter. So be honest and truthful about it. I'm not the best presenter. However, I need 25 to 30 presentations that I need to make, right, for me to get better, right? And you need to treat each one of your presentations as one of those 25, 30 presentations that you need to make to eventually get better at presentation, right? So from today onwards, when you're presenting, you're not going to think, oh, this is a big presentation, I need to impress people, this is a big moment for me. You're not going to think like that. You're going to think, I'm not that good at presentations. I acknowledge that. However, I've learned during the presentation 101 that if I have to get better at presentations, I need to make more of them, right? So the next 25, 30 presentations that each one of you all will make will be towards getting better in a couple of years. Not right now. It will be towards getting better in a couple of years. And the minute you kind of remove that pressure of this being that one big presentation, you'll be able to control your nerves. You'll be able to present in a way which is a lot better than otherwise, than if you put pressure on yourself. The number one important thing, if you want to make good presentations, is your ability to be comfortable, is your ability to feel confident, is your ability to control your nerves, right? You're always going to be nervous, but do you have the ability to live with your nervousness and give a presentation, or are you going to let your nervousness totally kill you, right? And if do whatever it takes to make yourself comfortable, and if you keep thinking this is a big moment, if you keep thinking this is a make or break presentation, which it's not, it's a misconception in your head, you're never going to be able to make good presentations, right? If any of y'all agree with me on this particular point, that we need to have this work in progress mentality, if you agree with me, please put a yes in the chat box. I want to see a big yes. Oh, glad to have so many big yeses. Thank you very much for the great participation, guys. You are totally on board. Good, 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 good. Just one more thing before we go on to this particular thing. I hope each one of y'all, and that's my prayer today. I hope each one of y'all actually takes a lot of these things seriously and wants and desires to get better at presenting or public speaking from today. Because in a lot of research that has been done around this particular subject, it is seen that people all around the world, this is not just you, not just India, all around the world, one of people's biggest fears is the fears to present or speak in front of people, right? So it is one of people's biggest fear. There was a funny research. Now, I don't know the validity of this particular research, so please don't hold me by it, right? I just saw it randomly on the internet. So there was this research that said that people are, they get scared more of presenting and public speaking. They get scared more of that, more than even the fear of fire or water or heights or any of these things, right? So presentation skills was literally a bigger fear for people than any of those fire, water, heights that we typically think of, fears that people have, right? So that's how big a fear it is. And big, and I hope you're listening, and a big and, if the 200 people here take the effort from today of actually getting better at presentation. And all of y'all will, if you put in the hard work, right? If you put in the work, all of y'all will get better at presenting. If you manage to get better at presenting, that will make you feel so confident that you can get over any fear that you have. You will feel so confident that you can handle any adversity, any problem, any situation. If you go from not being good at presenting to be good at presenting, if all of us can work together on that particular thing, and I'm going to be taking all the classes on presenting because I know how important this subject is to you, right? And if we can go from not being that good at presenting to being good at presenting, I can tell you, you will feel, each one of the 200 people here will feel that you can conquer any fear that you have, right? If you just get over this one fear, you will feel that you can conquer any fear that you have, and it will boost your confidence tremendously like absolutely nothing will, right? So I really want each one of y'all to put in the work that is required to get over this particular fear and kind of let your confidence come out after this, right? So that's how important this particular topic is. And I really hope each one of y'all is with me on this particular journey, right, of getting better. As a matter of fact, I used to be so scared of public speaking while growing up, right? I remember being in school where I would want to participate in the, what was called elocution contest then. I would want to participate in the debate competitions, right, when I was in school. But I would get so scared of being in front of people. That would be my worst fear of doing it, right? And I happened to tell my mother about it, and my mother was so kind, and between my 10th and 11th standard, she sent me for what was then called a public speaking course, right? Exactly, a class like this. And that was the start of me kind of getting better at it from that time. And I made use of that particular time. And a lot of my friends from school find it very, very funny because I've not been in touch with them for a long time, and they know the version of Swapnil that was in school that couldn't say a word. And so they're very, very surprised that I practically do this for a living, where I need to teach on these particular subjects, right? So somebody can go from not being good at it to being good at it, and at any age, right? It's got nothing to do with, okay, I started young. It helped that I started young, but it doesn't matter how old you are, right? As long as you take the effort from today to get better. It doesn't matter whether you're young or old to drive, right? Irrespective of what age you are, you can drive. It doesn't matter whether you're young or old to swim. Exactly like this. This is a skill like any of those. It doesn't matter how young or old you are, to better your communication, to better your presentation skills, right? Okay, so let's go towards the presentation body language. Okay, and let's see what we have in store for you here. Okay, now a few points you need to listen carefully. Okay, first tip to y'all if you're making a presentation is sit or stand as close to your audience as possible. Okay, so if you see this particular man on the screen, he's standing very close to the table, very close to the audience. Now, what most people tend to do is people tend to stand close to the screen on which things are projected, right? They tend to stand close to it, and there's a big distance often between the presenter and the audience, right? And that doesn't work, because what your audience wants you to do is they want to feel your energy. They want to hear you loud and clear, right? And therefore you want to stand or sit as close to their audience as possible, and don't go close to the screen. Okay, this is a very important tip. I've seen for years people getting this wrong, right? Now I'll just show you. Okay, a lot of y'all will present in conference rooms. Okay, and I'm gonna quickly show y'all. I'll just do a very bad drawing, but I will show y'all that anyway. Okay, so here, let's assume that this is, sorry. Okay, so let's assume that this is your conference table and this is where the screen is. Okay, and these are all the chairs which we have. Okay, these are all the chairs. Okay, now this is where the screen is. Now let's assume that for this particular presentation, when you're making it, only 4 people have come, right? So you have somebody occupying this seat. It's a big table though. Okay, somebody is occupying this seat, somebody is occupying this seat, and somebody is occupying this seat, right? So this is your audience. They've taken up these particular 4 seats. Now, this is where the screen is. Okay, so do not stand here and present to them, right? This is an absolute no, right? What you should be doing is you should be standing or sitting here, which is as close to this particular audience as possible. Do not stand close to the screen, right? Now, depending on where the cables are and the wires are and stuff, in most conference room, I know that, you know, you'd have a box here, you'd have a box here. So you'd be able to pull the wire and have your laptop here to present, right? You'd be able to do that, right? So that's possible. Even for some reason, if you have to keep your laptop here, you should have one of those slide changers that you would have seen, right? So again, you can be very, very close to the audience when you're speaking to them and you're not very, very distant, right? So that's something that you need to keep in mind. I hope that makes sense to everyone. And I hope everybody's clear about that. Okay, now, the next point. A few things, these are some questions that people often have, right? Should I be sitting and presenting? Should I be standing and presenting, right? So this is a question people have. And the answer to that is do what makes you feel more comfortable. So if you feel more confident to stand and present, please stand and present. If you feel more comfortable to sit and present, please sit and present, right? A lot of people, have seen so many people always stand and present, so they feel they need to stand and present, and you don't necessarily need to do it. If you like sitting and present, please sit and present. When I am presenting, I'm typically presenting to, so which is my other point. The only time when you're supposed to stand and not sit is if you have very large audiences, right? So typically if you have an audience of around, you know, anything from 10 to 15 people, even 20 for that matter, if you sit and present, absolutely fine. And in 8 out of 10 cases, your audiences will be within the 15 people mark. They're not going to be more than that, right? So you can sit and present. However, if you have an audience which is 20, 25, say 100 people for that matter, then you can't sit and present. And again, the simple logic for why you can't do it is that in most cases, people are not going to be able to see you, right? If you're going to sit, and if you have so many people in the room, they need to be able to see you. And therefore you need to stand, not for any other reason. But in most cases, when it comes to, you are going to be presenting to audiences below 15. So sit and present or stand and present, do what makes you feel more comfortable. That is the golden rule of presenting well. There's no other rule which is more important than do what makes you feel comfortable. Okay, so sit or stand is a personal preference that you have, right? But whether you're sitting or standing, like we mentioned in point number 1, sit or stand as close to the audience as possible. That is something which is very important. Okay, now standing and walking, right? So this is another big confusion people have. Should I be standing and presenting, or should I be walking around, right? This is the question people have. Now, again, the answer to that is do what makes you feel comfortable. A lot of people like just standing in one spot and presenting. Great. If that is something that you like, just stand in one spot and present. A lot of people like walking when they present, right? They like pacing when they present. If you like pacing when you present, please do that. Again, the golden rule, do what makes you feel comfortable. Now, if you are going to walk around during a presentation, if you like walking, the only thing to keep in mind is, in order not to distract the audience, ensure that you walk around in slow, steady steps. Okay, so you would have seen that a lot of people from your kind of senior management, often when they're walking and making presentations, they're doing that in slow, steady steps when they're doing it. And also when you're walking around, just another big mistake people make is, if you're walking around, just ensure that you're not constantly walking. If you have a projector and that's being projected on the screen, you're not walking in the middle of that, right? Because again, that will tend to distract your audience if you're walking in the middle of the projection and they can't see the screen very, very clearly, right? There are a few, as you get more comfortable presenting, you will realize that there are a few pros to walking around, but that only comes when you really get good at presenting, which typically if you're making, say, a day-long presentation or day-long training program that you have, and if you walk towards a certain section of the audience, that tends to wake that audience up, right? If they're sleeping, that just happens for some reason. If you walk towards the audience, they will tend to wake up and start paying more attention. But that you only do once you're very, very comfortable presenting, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to walk to grab people's attention as well. But you don't need to do that as a starting point. Standing or walking around is a personal preference of yours. Do what you are more comfortable with. Okay. And another thing to keep in mind, please do not take advice for and on presentations from everyone. right? Because most people will say, Arey, you should have stood up and presented. Most people don't know this subject fairly well. So my suggestion to you is, please do not take such feedback. That's why you need to come for a class like this. So somebody that's really studied the subject in depth and how you can get better on it can really give you advice on how to do it better, right? So this is another point to keep in mind. Now, the next thing is, we discussed, if you remember, posture in the first class that we did. Was a very exciting class on body language, right? And we discussed a few things around posture. The same things remain true here, whether you're sitting or whether you're standing, right? In both cases, you need to have a straight back when you're presenting. That's the simple rule of it. Straight back when you're presenting, whether you're sitting and presenting or standing and presenting. The second aspect of your body language, like we discussed in our first class, is taking care of your shoulders, right? Your shoulders at all points of time should not be droopy. You should have expansive shoulders. So straight back and expansive shoulder is what your posture needs to be when you're presenting to people. So it's the same rule as we had discussed in our first class, for those of you all that attended that first exciting class on body language, right? So simple rules about posture, nothing more to be discussed there. Now, again, we had discussed hands during the body language class. Now, what are you supposed to do with your hands when you're presenting? I'm going to move the laptop behind to show you. Okay. Here we are. What are you supposed to do with your hands? Very simply, what you're supposed to do with your hands is keep your hands in front of your stomach or chest. That's what you're supposed to do. Keep them like this, keep them like this, keep them in any position that you want. This is what you're supposed to do when you're presenting. Do not try to force any gestures, right? Do not try to force any gestures. However, what people typically tend to do, which you're not supposed to do, is please do not keep your hands here. Please do not keep your hands here. Please do not keep your hands here. These are absolute no-nos when you're presenting, right? What you are supposed to do is keep your hands in front of your stomach or chest. Keep your hands here, right? When you're doing it. Does that make sense to you? Okay, that's what you're supposed to do. Now, like I mentioned, do not force any gestures, right? Do not force any gestures, because very, very simply, if your attention is towards forcing gestures, you're not going to be able to present well. However, the more comfortable you get while presenting, you will automatically tend to move your hands or gesture according to what you're saying. So like I mentioned in the subject on body language, if you're saying this quarter we're going to see huge growth, this is how your hands must move, right? We're going to expand into all these markets. We're going to lower the cost. We're going to move very, very quickly on this particular subject. We're going to cut through this particular competition, right? So whatever that you're saying, your hand should automatically start gesturing depending on what you're talking about, right? So those are the simple rules. Straight back, expansive shoulders, hands in front of your stomach. As you get comfortable, let your hands move. However, do not try to force gestures, right? That's something which you're absolutely not supposed to do. If you're sitting and presenting, like you've seen, keep your hands on the table. Okay, keep your hands on the table. Again, let them move however that you want to. Nobody, you need to keep this in mind. No one is going to sign off on a proposal. No customer is going to give you business based on how your hands are moving, right? Nobody cares about how hands are moving. You need to be focused on your core message of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, right? However, if you don't keep your hands in the right position, what tends to happen is your body language gets impacted, right? So the reason why you're supposed to keep your hands in front of your stomach or chest is because it'll make you feel more comfortable. Your body language will look a lot better, because if you keep your hands in any other posture, in any other way, it will automatically impact the posture that you will present, right? So that's the way you present, keep your hands. Now, make eye contact while speaking. We've discussed this during the last session as well, that the way you're supposed to make eye contact is you can have two methods of making eye contact. You can make eye contact in a zigzag way, where you look at one person from this point, look at another person here, zigzag, right? So keep making eye contact like that with people. The other way you can make eye contact is in a semicircle way. What the semicircle way basically means is you can just cover each and every one on the table like this and come back, because a lot of people are not that comfortable making zigzag contact, right? Now, eye contact is very important during presentations.
exactly like eye contact is very important when you're having one-on-one conversations with somebody, right? So if I'm having a one-on-one conversation with you and I'm busy looking somewhere else when I am doing that one-on-one conversation with you, you're going to get very offended by that. You're not going to like that too much if I'm looking somebody somewhere else and presenting, right? Exactly like that. If I'm presenting to the audience and I'm not really looking at the audience is not going to really like that too much, right? Now, when you're presenting again, the rule that is, although you can't really calculate that while making eye contact, but the rule typically says make 1 or 2 seconds eye contact per person before you move on to the next person, or 1 sentence per person and then move on to the next person, right? So you, of course, you can't calculate that. All that you need to concentrate on is really look at a person, then move on to the next person, then really just look at him, then move on to the next one, and it will be 1 to 2 seconds or 1 line per person, right? So it will end up in that particular zone of time that you do. And the other big thing to remember while presenting, which is a big mistake, and I've often seen a lot of Indian people make this mistake, is we make the mistake, don't just make eye contact with the senior most person in the room, right? Do not do that. If you have a boss or super boss sitting there, do not just make eye contact with him. It looks very bad. It's like you're ignoring the rest of the people on the table. And a lot of them are likely to be influencers to whatever decision that it is, and they will get offended by the fact that you're just looking at the senior most person. So if you have somebody really senior looking in the sitting in the room, you can give them slightly more attention by looking at them. You can do that. However, don't just look at them, right? That's a very bad way of presenting. So keep that in mind in terms of eye contact is concerned, right? So those were the few things that you need to keep in mind as far as the body language is concerned. And of course, I'm going to take questions at the end of the presentation. Right now, as far as delivering your presentation is concerned, what are the few things that you need to remember? Okay, now this is extremely important. So I want all of you all to pay attention and really focus on this particular point. Speak in the language you're comfortable with. Okay, now listen carefully. For some reason, while people are presenting, they feel that they need to stand up and speak the Queen's English. And what the Queen's English really means is they need to speak some fabulous English as soon as they stand up, right? And it's so strange. See, if you have 10 of your colleagues sitting in a particular meeting, when we're not making presentation, more often than not, we're speaking to them in English, right? Right? If you're in the South, you're doing a mix of probably, Tamil and English or Telugu and English, depending on which part of the South you come from. But in the North, we're largely speaking to people in English. So a bit of Hindi, a bit of English. That's how we speak to our colleagues. But the minute those colleagues are in the same room and you need to make a so-called presentation to them, automatically we put some pressure on ourselves to speak amazing English when we 99% of the time we're talking to those same people in English, right? And then what happens is, because we're not that comfortable only speaking in English, we tend to get very, very nervous about our language, about the message in terms of standing in front of people. There's just so many things that we get nervous about, right? And that's when we tend to screw up, right? So what is my suggestion with you? And this is like literally at a snap of a finger. I've seen people getting much better just by implementing this one tool, and most people don't agree with me, and I'm going to spend a little more time on this, right? So what are you supposed to do if you are very well versed with English, if you're very comfortable with English, if you have a great command over the English language, please present in the English language. There's no problem with it. But if you are more comfortable speaking English, which is a mix of the two, please speak English, or please speak the mix of whatever, Tamil and English or whatever language that you're comfortable with. Do that, because what people care about, what your customers care about, what your stakeholders care about is not the quality of your English. What they care about is this person getting the message across in a smart way, in a confident way. That's what they care about much more than what your command over the English language is. Now look at this situation. If you're going to make, say, a presentation to a client, do you think the client is going to make a decision based on saying, यार वो जो पहला वेंडर था ना उसकी इंग्लिश बहुत अच्छी थी तो उसको बिजनेस दे देते हैं, राइट? इसकी ना थोड़ी इंग्लिश में प्रॉब्लम था तो नहीं, इसको नहीं देना, उसको देना है प्रोजेक्ट, राइट? That's not how any of us think. But for some reason, we've grown up thinking that the minute there's a presentation, we need to stand and speak pure English, and then we take huge tension about it and we stop making good presentations, right? So stop. Speak in the language that you're comfortable in. Right now, The only reason why I would recommend each one of you all to improve your command over the English language, there's just one reason for it. Because in the odd case that there is somebody in that audience that, say, if you're from the north and there is somebody in that audience who's an expat, or there is somebody from the audience that doesn't understand Hindi, then you cannot use English. Even if one person from the audience does not understand that particular language, then you are compelled to use English primarily, right? So the reason behind using English is only if somebody from the audience doesn't understand English. Otherwise, you can use English, but there could be a lot of cases, and the more senior you become, you're going to be dealing with all kinds of people, and a lot of them, the only language they could know is English, right? And that's why you need to better your command over the English. However, if everybody in the room is comfortable with Hindi or the local tongue and English, please go ahead with that. Please do not put additional pressure on yourself to speak the Queen's English. Okay, this is a big point, and this will help you in a big way if you take it seriously. Now, what a lot of people do is, a lot of people do not listen to people that have taken years studying this particular subject like me, and they will speak to some of their colleagues that have got no idea about it, and they'll say, nahi yaar, English bahut zaruri hai, English mein hi kar presentation, and they continue doing that and they continue screwing up. Okay, I have seen very, very senior people across the board that are not that comfortable with English, but are tremendous achievers and at the top of their game, because they know that the focus needs to be in terms of delivering the message well, convincing my audience, getting what I need, than it is to just speak great English, right? So keep that suggestion in mind, and I'll take questions around it later. Now, the second one is understand your message, don't learn it by heart. Okay, and I'd like to share a quote here. So Dale Carnegie, there's a company called Dale Carnegie, and there's a very famous author as well called Dale Carnegie, right? And he would train a lot of the American presidents close to, I think, 80 years back in terms of public speaking better. So he had a very nice quote. Okay, so listen to it carefully. He had a quote that said, he said, there are 3 speeches for every one that you make. Okay, and he said, number 1, it's the one that you prepare. Number 2, it's the one that you actually go and make. And number 3, it's the one that you wish you made, right? So he said there are 3 speeches for every one that you make: the one that you prepare, the one that you make, the one that you wish you made. Okay, now while delivering your message, keep in mind that what you prepare and what will come out of your mouth eventually will always be different, right? So it will never be the same, and it'll literally start from the first word you will say. When you're making a presentation, you'd probably prepare in your head saying, you know what, I'm going to say this first line, I'm going to say this first line like this, I'm going to say this first paragraph like this when I go to present. And often you will end up saying that first line itself, you'll end up saying something else, right? Because for every speech, there's the one that you prepare and the one that you give. And this happens to every human being, right? That they'll prepare something else, they'll give something else, right? So you're not the only one that this is happening to. As a matter of fact, even when you're preparing and rehearsing for your presentation, every rehearsal that you do will be slightly different from the other. And we often get very nervous during the rehearsal stage itself, saying, man, everyone is different, right? First I'm saying good morning, then I'm saying something else. I'm going to screw up in the presentation. No, that's the wrong way of thinking about it, right? Exactly what our teachers told us in school and what we often tell our kids: do not by heart the content, right? Do not ratta maro the subject. Understand that particular subject very well in your head and then speak it in your own way. Exactly like our teachers told us to then understand the message and then write it in your own words. Exactly like that. Understand the message of your presentation and then put it across in your own words. You don't need to by heart anything, because the more you by heart it, the more you're likely to put stress on your memory, the more likely you are to get nervous, because what you prepare and what's going to come out of your mouth will always be different. Okay, so that's the other thing that I want you to know. Understand your message. Don't learn it by heart. This is a presentation. It's not some speech that you're supposed to make. Okay, now the third point is make your presentations interactive. Okay, now what do I mean by interactive? 2 or 3 very simple things that you need to do. Exactly like during this presentation, I'm checking on you. Of course, this is a Zoom call. We have close to 250 people on the call. So I can't really make it that interactive, but every once in a while, I'm asking you a question saying, if you're clear, say yes, right? If this, we're trying to make it as interactive as we possibly can in a session like this. However, when you're presenting in front of people, say 15, 20 people sitting in front of you, from time to time, from probably every slide, every section, keep checking in on that particular audience, right? Saying that, are you clear? Have I made myself clear? Do you have any questions? So that's what you want to do. Literally at the end of every section, at least, you want to keep checking in on them to make it interactive, and you don't want to make it a one-way street, right? The only possible time where you need to make it more one-way is when you have a large audience, whether it's on Zoom or whether they're sitting or standing in front of you, right? Where it becomes largely one-way. But most of y'all are going to deal with smaller audiences. So keep checking in on the audience, saying, are you clear? Do you have any questions? So that is something that you need to do, right? Now, the second sub point is, don't look into the presentation, look at the audience, right? A lot of times what people do is they're busy looking into the presentation and they're talking into the presentation. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to look into the presentation and then you're supposed to talk to the people. Because if you keep talking into the presentation, the audience will totally lose you and be not interested in the presentation, because they'll often barely be able to hear you if you're looking into the presentation and speaking and not looking into the audience and speaking. So what you're supposed to do, look at your point, then look at the audience and speak that point out. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay. Now, the third point is, carry notes or prepare a PPT. Don't do both. Okay. This is again a big mistake that people make. Now, when you're preparing, you may make all the notes that you want to make around what you want to say, but it's an absolutely bad idea to have a PPT which is on screen and also carry notes, because what tends to happen is then people are not clear. The presenter is confused between whether I should look at the PPT or whether I should look at the notes, right? And in that particular confusion, he loses his connect with the audience, right? So what I suggest to people is, if you have a PPT, do not carry notes. If you're making some kind of a speech, or if you're making a presentation where you don't actually have a PPT with you, in that particular situation, please carry notes, right? In that particular situation, please don't rely on your memory. Please carry notes if you don't have a PPT. Even if you're on an important con call where you're not presenting, but you still need to articulate your views to a lot of people, right? There's no PPT. Please ensure that you made notes of what you want to say, and please ensure that you look at those notes and talk, because what you want to focus on is on delivering the message in a more powerful way. You don't want to be focusing on by-hearting the message. And somehow in India, we are so obsessed with this idea of by-hearting stuff. Oh, I shouldn't look at notes when I talk. I should know everything in my head. How can I not know everything in my head? We're so obsessed with this idea of by-hearting. Nobody cares about you memorizing the entire presentation, right? Ensure that you carry notes, that you look at each and every point and put that point forward. And in one of our subsequent sessions, we'll also tell you on how to go about making those notes. Okay. Yeah. Don't try to copy someone else. Let your personality show. Okay. Very important point here. I often, again, I'm giving you political examples, but this has got nothing to do with politics. So please don't get into commenting on the political side of stuff. These are just examples of public figures that we know that most of us consider as good public speakers, right? So don't try to copy anybody else. Let your personality show. So I think two kind of prime ministers that we've had in the past that most people consider to be good public speakers. I think our current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is a very good public speaker. He's known all around the world for being a good public speaker. And previously, I think Atal Bihari Vajpayee also was known to be a very good public speaker, right? Everybody would really admire him for those skills. However, both these people had totally different styles of presenting, right? Because they were totally different personalities, and they present in their own personality, right? So my suggestion to each one of y'all is, please don't try to copy somebody else's style of presenting just because you say like their style of presenting. When you are presenting, let your personality show, which means just be yourself, because the more you try to copy somebody else, the more you're going to fail at it. Okay. I'll give you another example around this. A lot of people ask me the question of humor, right? Should I be humorous during my presentation? And my simple answer to them is that if you are a funny person in real life, if you love cracking jokes, if that is who you are in your real life, if you go on stage, it is totally fine to be humorous, to be funny, because all of us like a little bit of humor in our lives and even in our business presentations, right? And we'll get into the advanced presentation class, how to, what that humor should be about. So we'll get into it later. But if you are funny in real life, ensure that you bring that sense of humor or bring that side of your personality to the presentation. But if you're somebody that's not the kind to crack jokes, you don't need to be funny just because the presenter before you was funny, right? Because your joke is going to fall flat on its face, right? If you try to be funny just because somebody else was funny. So don't try to copy somebody else. Be your own self, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Okay. And the last point of this particular masterclass is work on your energy, right? Use an energetic tone of voice when you're speaking. People hate people that speak in a monotonous way, right? With no energy which is put into that. People hate that particular thing. If for those of you all that attended the class on body language on how to speak impactfully, we got very little time to address the topic of speaking impactfully, but we covered tone, and that is what we're speaking about, right? So speak in an energetic tone of voice. For those of y'all who weren't a part of that particular thing, once you become a member, you'll be able to access the self-paced class. For whatever classes that you missed, you'll be able to access that particular class. So go and check that particular class on how to speak more impactfully, right? So when you're speaking, speak with a more energetic tone of voice. Put more of yourself while talking than you would otherwise, right? Again, don't try to copy somebody else, but put just your own energy, put more of it while speaking. And a good way to get yourself started, and you would have seen a lot of presenters do this, is start your presentation with a very loud greeting that sets the tone, right? So you'd always see presenters saying, "Good morning, everyone." Then most people don't respond, and they'll say aloud, "Good morning, everyone." And that's in a way to start their own engine, right? In a way to give themselves some energy that they say it once or twice to bring in that particular energy. I do that just about every time that I make a presentation to people. I tend to say a loud greeting so that kind of revs me up in a way, and also brings in more energy into my presentation, right? So with that, we are done with the first of 5 topics on presentation skills, which is one of the most important 21st century skill. I'm sure all of y'all would agree with that, right? Now, what I want everybody to do is please put your top 3 takeaways of this particular workshop, of whatever you've learned, your top 3 takeaways. Please ensure that you are putting them down in the chat box, right? And please address them to all attendees and participants. Okay, good to see, good to see. Good to see. Come on, everybody, put your big takeaways here, because again, it doesn't matter what you learn unless you put it into action.
Amazing. Great to see so many takeaways. I'm so happy that you're learning something amazing on a Sunday morning. Amazing. Thank you very much. Keep sharing, keep sharing, keep sharing. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. It's very, very nice of you all to put your comments, to actually share your learnings, your big takeaways. Now, what's coming up next? I'm going to share the poll next, which is your feedback for this particular session. I'm going to share that next. So quickly, you all can do your poll, score us on a scale of 5 so that we know where we stand. That's what we're going to do next. After that, Mitali is going to share in the same chat box. She's going to share the link of the assessment. We've had some problems with the assessment over the last few days. Today, hopefully it works completely fine. So please take your assessments. If you answer any 7 questions right, you will get a certificate immediately, right? And if you have any problems with the assessment, don't worry. We will email it to you as well, right? So first finish the poll, then finish the assessment, right? And after that, we will take a 3 minutes break, and then we will move into our after class, okay, which is a dedicated section just to answer your questions. So those of y'all who are done, that don't have more time, can log off after you do your assessments, and y'all can continue with your day. For those of y'all who want some more, want to participate in the question answer connected to this thing, because we want to answer everybody's question. There are 13 questions already there. We move into the lovely after class session that we have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sampath Kumar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm just launching the poll, my friends. Just a minute. Poll, poll, poll. Mitali, can you launch the poll? I am having a bit of a problem launching the poll. My screen is frozen. It's come? Okay, great. I think the poll is launched. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Before I move on, since by the time you are taking the poll, for those of you who are done with the poll, okay, very, very nice, very nice thought that's really defined my life in a way, is a thought that says every human being must sleep at night smarter than they woke up in the morning. Okay, I really love that thought. I'll repeat it. It says every human being must sleep at night smarter than he woke up that day in the morning. And by each one of you all attending these classes on a Saturday and Sunday, and again, for those of you who can't attend it, watch the self-paced master classes, which is the same class in a way, in a recorded, in a self-paced fashion. But when each one of you all sleep at night smarter than you woke up, before you know it, you will have very different careers, right? Because if you keep improving at that pace, the compounding that will happen will be tremendous, and you won't be able to recognize yourself beyond a point. You can get that good if you really focus on learning, right? And slowly but steadily, that will help you. And all of us know this, because for those of us who have children, we often say this to our children, right? We tell them the importance of learning on a day-to-day basis. And I think the same thing is true with each one of us. Each one of us needs to really concentrate on the learning on a day-to-day basis. So let's sleep every day smarter than we woke up in the morning, and see the tremendous change that happens even before we realize it by doing that, right? Okay, so I think I am going to end polling. I think polling is done. Should I be ending the polling? Yeah, okay. Okay. What? Yeah, that's okay. Ah, so good. Some good feedback. Thank you very much, guys. Stop sharing results. Thank you for your good feedback. The assessment. Yeah, assessment. Guys, Mitali has just shared the assessment link on the chat box. Mitali Bose, my co-host. Please click on it, take the assessment to get your certificate. You've taken the effort to be here on a Sunday morning. We want it to be worthwhile so that you have a certificate to show for it. So please take the assessment right now. If you have any problems with it, we'll email it to you. Don't worry. Okay. Okay, don't worry. So we will share the assessment with you. I don't know why this is repeatedly happening from our end. A lot of people can take it. Some people are facing this message as well. Yeah, again, message. You can start assessment without logging in. At the end of the assessment, you will, okay, but there is still seems to be some error in that link. Not working. Okay, don't worry. We had this problem yesterday as well. Apologies from our side. We will send it across to you by email, and you can answer that particular thing by email, right, while doing it. So don't worry about this particular thing. We will ensure that it is sorted by the next class. This error happened. It's happened a couple of times. It's a problem from our end, right? Okay, now the next feedback is done. Don't forget, right? Any of your friends that miss a class, or if you missed any of the previous classes, once you become a member, you will be able to have self-paced. You'll be able to attend the same thing in self-paced. When you become a member, you will have emails, the email insights that go to you on a day-to-day basis. You will keep getting small tips that you will get from Work Better side that will help you, remind you of concepts of soft skills on a day-to-day basis. So that's something that you will get. And the last thing is email and SMS communication, right? So you will have all the email and SMS communication. Please look into your spam and your promotion boxes, because a lot of times our emails go there and then people don't get it. Even your SMS is on new Android phones, our messages sometimes go to your transaction box or your promotion box. So whether it's the SMS or it's your email, please pull our emails into your primary box so that they continue coming there instead of going on the promotion or the spam boxes. Somebody's asking me what self-paced means. Self-paced means it's the same class that we've done live. For those of y'all who want to go through it again, we will send a recording of this particular class for you. So you can do it at your own time if you want to do the class again. If you miss the class or you miss any class over the weekend, you don't necessarily, for those of you all who enjoy coming and attending something live, can come and attend it over the weekend. For those of you all who want to do it at your own time, right, don't want to attend it over the weekend, you can watch the self-paced or the recorded version of this masterclass and take the assessment after that, right? So we leave that option up to you in terms of what you need to do in this particular class. Okay, yes, don't worry about the assessment. We will send the assessment by email to you. Yes, please share yesterday's session recording. I missed that. Yes, we are going to every Tuesday or Wednesday, or between Monday to Wednesday, we send the links of the previous week's classes to everyone. So all of y'all will get it until your membership is on. Once you become a member, anything that you miss, you'll get it on Monday, on Tuesday for you to attend it then and to take your certificate then, right? You will get a lot of people are saying, oh, we don't get the emails. We have a system where we can actually check who the emails have gone to and who they haven't gone to. So what typically tends to happen, a lot of these emails go in the promotion or spam box. So please be very careful and check this. And like Mitali's mentioned, the assessment as well as the self-paced will be shared to you between Monday and Tuesday. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we are done. Now, what's coming up next week? For those of you who want to attend the live classes, what's coming up next week is strengthening your planning skills. Planning yourself, organizing yourself, managing your time. These are such important topics, right? So how do you plan better to succeed in your professional life? That's what's coming next week. We have an excellent trainer who's an expert on this particular subject, who's going to take you all through that. And on the 28th of June, for those of you all who are still around, I am going to be doing a coaching call. Now, this particular coaching call is just dedicated to all and every one of your questions on the topic of soft skills and behavior and workplace. So we're going to spend 90 minutes with me just taking your questions, whatever your questions are. And these sessions tend to be very, very interesting, right? Because the question that one person has often is a question that everybody else has as well in some way, right? So please come for the next class and please come for the coaching class as well. You're going to learn every day something valuable, which you're going to be able to use. When will you get the assessment? Don't worry, it's going to be sent to you by email for you to take it. So absolutely no worrying about that, right? Now, the after class, we're going to take a 2-minute break, not even a 3-minute break. We're going to take a 2-minute break. So if any one of y'all who are done and want to leave, can please do that. For those of y'all who want to stay back, in 2 minutes, I will be back where we will take each one of your questions. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, some people are saying the link is working now. So if those of you who want to take the assessment now can take it. Otherwise, it's going to go to your, you'll get it in on email. Okay. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start the after class session, a session which is dedicated to answering your questions. Okay. Yeah. So the first question is, just 1 minute. Yeah, so the first question is by Abhinav Prasad, and I'm going to read the question aloud. My manager listens from 5 people on any topic and she consolidates data in her mind. She presents the same topic better than all 5. I want to acquire that skill. Any tips or tricks to acquire that skill, right? Abhinav, very, very good question. Okay. Unfortunately, I cannot give you tips or tricks connected to that, like just 2 or 3 points, and then you'll be able to do that. No, you're going to have to kind of understand the entire topic of how to present well, right? Because one of the important topics which is coming next for you is the topic of how do you structure your content in an excellent way. And while structuring the content, the stuff that we will share with you will also give you an idea of how to get full clarity of the subject in your head, right? So it will do both things. The way we will teach you on how to design your content will give you absolute clarity in your own brain on how to go about on what you're talking about, and it'll also be a lovely way of laying out that particular content for the people in front of you, right? However, the big thing that I want you to take away from your manager actually is the fact that your manager does a very good job of listening to all the input that she gets from, say, 5 people that are presenting on the topic. And that in itself is a huge skill. I have seen that most people, when they're on the receiving end, when they're an audience, and even a lot of managers for that matter, have an attitude where it's an attitude where they feel, oh, I know it all, right? I understand everything. What is this junior going to teach me? Or what is this team member going to teach me? So instead of paying attention, instead of listening well, they are busy on their phones, busy on their laptops, busy being distracted, because in their head, they're thinking, what is this person going to teach me? So I think from a presentation point of view of how to put it together, you have to go through the classes for you to really know it. And there's no one tip that I can give you. But I love this quality of your manager of saying that, you know what, I'm actually going to listen to the input of all 5 people. I'm going to process that very well in my head, and then I'm going to do an even better job of putting it forward, right? So I hope that when you are an audience or when you're a leader of people, you listen to them very carefully, you process all that information, and then we'll teach you on how to structure it as you go ahead, right? Right. So good question. Thank you very much for that particular question. Okay. Now, Akib Mohammed, my friend, I'm happy that you're attending a lot of the sessions. I'm seeing your name again and again. Amazing. Okay, good. I'm happy that you're here. In a case where I am presenting to other teams, my boss, who is a co-presenter, which I was forced to make him as he didn't want me to present, interrupts me for every point and tells the same point again, what I've told. How do I handle such a situation? Okay. Um, it's a very good question. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you. Okay. Because there are lots of ifs and buts when it comes to my answer here. Okay. Um, I don't know what your equation with your boss is to start with, right? But a lot of us, if you don't have a relationship of transparency in a way, if you don't have a relationship where you can be candid to each other, that's a problem. But very often, I can tell you, okay, and maybe this is the case with you, very often your boss also doesn't know consciously that he's doing this thing. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, I don't know, right? But your boss often doesn't know that he's doing this, and he's doing it without realizing, right? Like he's interrupting you for every point and saying just about the same thing. So it could be that maybe your boss is over enthusiastic towards that, maybe he loves talking. I don't know what it could be, right? What that dynamic could be. But my suggestion to you is, say if you make a presentation, if you guys are together, say driving back or chit chatting about it, depending on your equation with it, my suggestion to you is make a puppy face, catch him on a good day to start with, right? When he's in a good mood, catch him on that particular day, and actually just say that, boss, when I was making the presentation, I'm really sorry to mention this, but I was getting slightly disturbed, that you were interjecting on each and every point, and I really wanted to understand whether I was doing something wrong, right? So position it that way to it, saying that, what, maybe I was doing something wrong, so let me know, because there was a lot of interjection today. And to start with, see whether he has something valuable to say, right, to that particular thing. See whether he has something valuable to say. Maybe he was interjecting because you were making the point, but you weren't articulating that point in the best way possible. Or maybe he was doing it without realizing, right? But either way, the only kind of way to sort this thing out is by catching him at a good time, when he's in a good mood in a way, and putting this point across very, very politely, while keeping a window open for the fact that possibly you weren't articulating your views as well as you should have, and that's why he had to intervene. Because sometimes you could think you're making a point, but you're not probably communicating that point as strongly, and maybe he's doing it in that way. I don't know. The only way to resolve it, catch him on a good day and speak to him about it, right? We're so scared sometimes to talk to our boss, and what we often do is we often go on the offense, which means we go and we say, why is the boss doing it? He shouldn't be doing it. And we get very, very aggressive. I wouldn't recommend that, right? Be respectful, be polite to your boss, be candid, catch him at the right time. A person's state of mind is very, very important. A person's emotional state is very important. If you catch him on the wrong day, you'll get a wrong response from him. It's exactly like asking for leave. If you catch your boss on the right day, he'll give you leave. If you catch him on the wrong day, he'll say, no, what are you taking leave after COVID now? Right? So that is very, very important that you do that. Okay, Akib, I'm glad to have you. I hope you keep coming back for the sessions. Thank you very much for this question. Very practical question. Okay, so Abhinav Prasad has a question where he says, any tips to grab the audience's attention in the first 30 seconds? Abhinav, I hope you're here and you've not left yet, okay? If you're here, Abhinav, this is a question that a lot of people will have. Now, what's the answer to it? The first answer to it is, do not put too much of pressure on yourself to start your presentation with a bang. Okay, this is very counterintuitive advice, because all your life you would have heard you need to start with a bang. Yes, you need to start with a bang. There is no doubt that starting with a bang often helps. However, when you are making a presentation, most of us are our most nervous and most shaky towards the start, right? The first, say, 1 minute, 2 minutes, up to 5 minutes, we are our most shaky during our presentations. Now, it's naturally we're going to be very nervous, very shaky. On top of that, if you put pressure on yourself to start with a bang, it's going to be a double dhamaka, 2 layers of pressure. So as it is, there is pressure, then you put pressure on yourself to start with a bang, right? Because you heard that all the time. That will put more pressure on yourself, and you will end up, as a matter of fact, you would want to start with a bang, but you'll end up doing just the opposite. And this comes from my years of training people. I've trained literally lakhs of people on this particular subject. So I've seen this happening practically. Now, what are you supposed to do, right, towards the start of a presentation? First, you need to acknowledge that my start will always be shaky, because I am going to be my most nervous at the start. So I am not going to try to do anything special or anything outstanding at the start, because the minute I start feeling like my nervousness goes down, my confidence comes up, I'm going to start presenting much better. So do not put pressure on yourself to start with a bang. Your approach, Abhinav, my friend, your approach needs to be, I am going to play like an Indian batsman who's playing in Australia or England or New Zealand, right? I'm going to play like him, which means what they're told, if you remember, is please play out cautiously the first 5 to 6 overs when the ball is swinging. Right? That's what they're, please play cautiously. Don't try to hit the ball too much. Leave as many balls as possible, because the minute you play out the first 5 to 10 overs, then you'll get comfortable. The ball will get slightly old. It won't swing as much. And then you can concentrate on making the runs, right? And if you remember, when we lost the World Cup semifinals to New Zealand, till then we adopted that strategy. And somehow we tried to do too much during those first 10 overs and lost so many wickets, right? And that's what happens to many a presenter. Many a presenters, they try to do too much during the first 30 seconds. So Abhinav, counterintuitive advice, do the bang opposite. Don't worry about the starting. You're going to be nervous, gain your confidence slowly, and then you will end your presentation with a bang. Okay. Now, the only other tip for you I have, my friend, towards the start is start with a loud greeting, right? So start with a very loud greeting where you always go and say, good morning, everyone. If they don't respond, say, good morning, everyone. Again, do that as loud as possible to rev up or to start your own engine, you know, so that you're speaking in an energetic way. That's a good tip to start with. The other good tip to start with is, even before making your presentation, if it's a smaller audience, you can always start just talking and interacting with them, right? So that makes you more comfortable. Even if before you start your presentation, just start interacting with your audience, do a little bit of small talk, ask them questions about stuff, and then kind of smoothly go into your presentation. The whole point is you shouldn't go into your presentation like it's one big event, right? You should just go into your presentation very smoothly, transition from a conversation that you're having with the audience into your presentation without making it too big a deal, without putting too much of pressure on yourself. Okay. Abhinav, excellent question. Thank you very much. I hope the answer helps you. Slightly counterintuitive, slightly contradictory advice, but I'm sure you've understood it properly. If you haven't, add another question. I'll answer that. I have a friend called Yogesh Kashalkar. I hope this is the same friend. Yogesh, are you the same friend that I have? Yeah. What are the few important things to remember when presenting on Zoom or a similar video conference platform, right? Yogesh, if you're here, that is a good question. I honestly, this is a very, two things, right? This is a very long answer because there are lots of micro tips that are there when you're presenting Zoom. And I think one of the things on Zoom or any other platform, I think one of the things that each one of you all should do is really understand the platform in itself, because each one of these platforms has different features that you can use, which is very, very detailed, right? And you can go online and kind of study that platform to see what you need to do. Other than that, I wouldn't have any other kind of suggestion, because I think the rules of presenting online versus the rules of presenting in front of a room of people are almost the same. There is nothing really different that is happening. Of course, in most cases here, you're only saying this part of my body, but in terms of most other things, I think the rules remain almost the same of what you're trying to do. Again, in sessions like this, especially if you're dealing with smaller audiences, this audience is a very large one, but if you're dealing with smaller audiences, try to make it as interactive as possible. Get them to answer stuff in the chat box, get them to ask questions. So the more interactive you make those particular sessions, the better it's going to be. But other than that, in terms of your thought of presentation, your structure, most of those things, I think they're pretty common, whether you're using Zoom or any other video conference platform, or whether you're in front of people, right? So that is my answer to that. But I would encourage you to research a lot more on this subject in terms of understanding the platform itself and what else you can use on it. Okay. So thank you, Yogesh. Same, Yogesh. Yes, thank you very much. You can, Yogesh, you can call me and ask me any questions that you have. Okay, but I'm glad that you're here on this particular platform. Okay. How should one go about structuring a presentation so that no point is left out? A format or guideline could help you. Harshvardhan, great question. Unfortunately, I'm not going to answer this question for you here. We have a whole amazing class on the subject of structuring your presentation, which is coming up. Okay. And I would really encourage you, because this is not an answer that I can give within 2 minutes, right? It's an answer which you need to go through the entire 90-minute class to understand how to structure it. And then you will be able to do it. So this is not a short, quick answer I can give about this particular topic, but it's a great question nevertheless. You should come for that particular class. Okay, Harsh, thank you very much for your question. I'm sorry, can't give a detailed answer for this right now. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay. Now, me, Madhusudan Sharma, just have a query about, if we don't impress the audience and we don't get a clap in return, will it not demotivate me for the next president? I love the honesty of this particular group to start with, right? Madhusudan Sharma, great question. Okay. Now, I'll share a tip, which is the only tip. If you really want to get good at presentation, this is the only tip that you need to keep. One of the only important tips that you need to keep in mind, Madhusudan. And the tip is, if you want to start making great presentations, expect Nothing from your audience. Okay, that is the only way in which you will actually end up being a good presenter. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this. Expect nothing from the audience. What it means is that when you're going to present, if you expect your audience to pay attention, to not be distracted, to not yawn during the presentation, or to clap at the end, you are setting yourself up for failure. Are you getting it? You are setting yourself up for failure because you are keeping the wrong expectation of that particular audience, right? And the minute you have that particular expectation, you will keep getting dejected. You will keep getting demotivated. There's no doubt about it. So the way you need to start thinking is this. The way you need to think is, when I'm going to go and present, you need to tell yourself at the start that, listen, there is a possibility that my audience is going to be distracted. There is a possibility that they will yawn. There's a possibility that they'll be on their phone. There'll be a possibility that they may walk out. And there is a possibility that none of them will clap. All these 5 things are distinct possibilities that are there. There is no doubt about this. At the start, expect that that is going to be the way things are going to happen. Do not expect them to pay attention. Do not expect them to clap. And if you go with that particular mindset in, you'll end up doing a way better job of presenting than if you go with the mindset of thinking that, oh, everybody should pay attention, everybody should clap. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 point connected to this is, the other thing to remember, just because an audience seems distracted, possibly yawning, and doesn't clap, doesn't mean that you haven't done a great job. Right? That's the other thing I want to tell you, right? So I'll just share one of my experiences very early on, right? When I first started, became a facilitator, became a teacher in the corporate world, I had gone to do this subject itself, right? Of presentation skills. And, you know, there was this one gentleman during the entire class that seemed extremely distracted. He seemed extremely uninterested during the presentation that I was making, right? Or what I was teaching him, right? So I was wondering, I was thinking, saying, what is going wrong, right? Maybe I am covering something that he doesn't like, because he was yawning, his body language was bad. I was really wondering. So at the end of day 2, exactly like we took feedback here from you, we had these feedback forms, actual paper forms, which was very detailed, right? You had to give feedback on tons of parameters that were there. So I especially went at the end of that 2-day workshop to check what that person's feedback was, that had extremely bad body language, that seemed extremely lazy. What was his feedback? Because maybe I thought he'd have really bad feedback. And Madhusudan, I was really shocked to see the feedback he had given, right? Because although he was yawning, although his body language was right, he had given excellent feedback for the workshop. And he said, this is a very useful workshop. Everybody must attend this workshop. And I would have never expected that given his body language, right? So the 2 points that I'm sharing with you is, number 1, do not expect anything from the audience. Do not expect them to pay attention. Do not expect them to clap. If you keep expecting that, you are setting yourself up for presentation failure. Number 2, just because somebody is yawning, not attentive, has bad body language, into their phone, doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing a bad job or that they're not interested. They may not have learned in terms of how you need to listen. You know, they may not know that it's something which is disrespectful. They could have had a very long night. They could have been working late at night, and that's why they could be yawning, right? You can't predict what each and every person is going through, right? Madhusudan, excellent question. I hope you got a good answer to it. And I hope you keep these 2 points in mind along with the rest of the people while you go ahead. Good job, Madhusudan. Good question. Right now, I'm looking at the chat box as well. You're posting. Okay, good. Okay, if I'm presenting, Chirag has a question where he says, if I'm presenting to seniors, can I tell them or add a slide for rules at the start of the presentation? Like, no asking questions in between. Chirag, what a good question, right? Now, can you add a slide of rules? Don't call them rules, but add the slide anyway. That is what I would suggest, right? Don't call them rules, right? Play slightly smart. You say suggestions. That's a better way of putting it, right? So a few suggestions that I have, and you could say the number 1 suggestion that I have is, in order to avoid confusion, I will answer all questions at the end of every section. A suggestion that I have is, if we have any questions, kindly, whatever rules that you want to put, do not mention them as rules and put them as suggestions in front of your seniors. I think that's a very, very good idea to have, because that could set some decorum in the room when you're presenting, right? That could bring some structure, that could bring some order to what is happening, right? So I think you should do that. Just call it suggestions and not rules. However, the reality of the situation, Chirag, and I'm sure you know that by now, even if you put those suggestions and you make them very, very clear, it's not that everybody in the room are going to abide by those particular suggestions that you've put. So my suggestion to you is put it, but don't expect everybody to abide by it, because the minute you don't expect to abide by it, even if they don't abide and say ask questions in between, you will still be mentally prepared for that. You won't get irritated. It won't break your flow, because you are, although you're making the suggestions clear to them, you're still expecting them to, in a way, break those particular rules, break those suggestions. So you are mentally prepared for it, right? We have a session on handling difficult audiences, Chirag, where we are going to be taking the session of how to handle Q&A in great detail, right? Almost half an hour we're going to spend on how to handle Q&A during presentations. That could be a subject of interest to you, which we can go further into it, but you have a smart question there, and that's the way to do it, right? Put it as suggestions. Thank you very much, Chirag. Okay, tips to control nervousness and anxiety. Abhinav Prasad, we have a whole workshop on that, because that is a kind of question everybody has. But since you asked this question, I don't want to disappoint you. Of the 10 things that you need to do, I will tell you one thing. Okay, but the one thing that I tell you will be very, very effective for you, because I want it to be worth your time for all the people that have stayed back during our after class, right? And the suggestion on how to handle nervousness and anxiety, the number one suggestion is admit to your audience that you're nervous, right? At the start of your presentation. Now, most of y'all will think, how do I do that? That is the best way to deal with your nervousness, because the big problem often is to be nervous and to act like you're not nervous, right? That brings in more anxiety, that brings in more nervousness. Be nervous and act like you're confident, right? That doesn't work. If you want to get good at presentations and you're genuinely feeling nervous, the first thing to do is start your presentation by admitting to your audience. They could be juniors, seniors, customers, stakeholders, it doesn't matter. To admit to your audience that, listen, this is a big occasion for me. I'm not that used to presenting. And because I'm not that used to presenting, and this is a big occasion for me, I'm feeling very honored to stand in front of you all, but it's also making me very nervous. So please forgive me if I bring in any nervousness here. So start your presentation like that if you're genuinely nervous. And I can assure you, because most of your audience, when they come to present, 9 out of 10 of them are always nervous when they're presenting. They will totally understand you, because it's one human being in the end talking to another human being, right? So they will understand that you are nervous. And as a matter of fact, the minute you show them your vulnerability and you show them the fact that you are ready to be honest and vulnerable with them, you will have 8 out of 10 people on the audience coming on your side, right? Where they'll say, no problem, don't worry about it. Go ahead, make your presentation. And that itself will start boosting your confidence while you're doing it, right? So the most counterintuitive, almost, it doesn't sound right, but it is right, right? And the most counterintuitive advice to you is the best way to deal with nervousness and anxiety is to admit that to your audience that you're nervous. Admit to them in a way where you tell them that it's an honor to stand in front of you. I'm not that used to making presentations. Therefore, my son has come already. So therefore, I'm nervous being in front of you. So please bear with me. And 8 out of 10 people are going to come on your side, and they'll be like, okay, no problem. Don't worry about it. Go on and make your presentation. That will boost your presentation in a way that even our entire session that we're going to do on nervousness, this is the most important tip. I've given it to you here on the after class, but please come and attend the other one as well, because that is going to help you deal with all other, you'll know exactly how to deal with the subject of nervousness, right? Movement amongst participants, is it okay? Neeraj Verma, क्या करोगे भाई? कुछ कर ही नहीं सकते तो okay तो होना ही पड़ेगा. About movement amongst participants, yes. If you're making long presentations, your participants are going to get restless. I'm sure you sitting at home were very restless through this almost 2 hours of presentation. You would have moved around. If you're on the phone, you would have taken the phone around a little bit, right? So we're very, very used to, we're not used to sitting in one place. We're almost like children, right? So don't, like I mentioned on the other question, expect very little from your audience. Expect them to move, expect them to get distracted, expect all those things to happen. And that's something where we don't have a choice. You cannot control what the audience is doing or how they're feeling. So don't worry about it. It is totally fine, Neeraj, if your audience moves. Don't let that distract you in any way. Thank you very much. Abhinav Prasad, another question. Good. He's making his money's worth. I like that. I like when people ask a lot of questions. Audiences lose attention after 10 minutes. So as a presenter, what should I do to grab the attention back? Any tips or tricks? Okay, I'll tell you one tip or trick there, right? So first of all, we started this presentation by saying audiences have very little time. Okay, so you need to always keep that at the back of your mind when you are making a presentation, that the audience has very little time, and therefore it's very important for you to make your presentations to the point. Okay, that's the key thing. Audiences have limited time, so you need to make your presentations to the point. Now, for you to make your presentations to the point, you must know what the point of the presentation is. If you're not clear on what the point of the presentation is, you can't make your presentation to the point. And what that knowing what the point of your presentation is basically knowing what the objective of your presentation is. The minute you understand the objective of your presentation, you can keep your presentation to that point, and automatically your presentation will become more concise and to the point, right? The session that we're going to have on structuring your content covers the part of how to understand your objective, then how to structure your content in a way where it becomes concise and to the point, so that you can hold everybody's attention, right, in the presentation. Now, there was a very famous author, I forget his name, who was asked the question. He was asked the question saying, how do you keep your novel so interesting? That is what he was asked. How do you keep your novel so interesting? To which he gave a very good answer. He said, I just cut out all the boring parts out of my novel, and it automatically becomes interesting. So exactly like that, the problem with most of our presentations is that we fill them with irrelevant details, right? We fill them with details that just are not to the point, just don't matter. Therefore, they become very, very long, and therefore people get bored, right? This whole thing on saying audiences lose their attention span within 10 minutes, that's not necessarily true, that the audiences lose their attention span when you make your presentation not to the point. When you put irrelevant stuff in your presentation, that's when they lose your presentation. When you don't speak with energy, that's when they lose their attention. Because what happens is, if you're making a sharp to the point presentation, even if they lose their attention, they will come back very, very quickly to it, right? If you are making a great presentation. So that's what you need to focus on, right? To make your presentations to the point, to make your present. Now, again, sometimes a 10-minute presentation may be long, and sometimes a 3-hour presentation could be short. It's exactly like movies, right? Sometimes a 2-hour movie feels like, ye khatam hi nahi ho rahi hai, 2 ghante ki movie, right? It's 2 hours, but sometimes 2 hours get over and you don't even realize that the 2 hours are over, right? When you're watching a movie that's great. So it's not about the actual time, it's about the contents of what is happening in that time, which will determine whether your audience is paying attention or not, right? Now, Abhinav Prasad, one other tip for you. You would have seen me doing this through the presentation, right? To catch people's attention. I'll say, guys, listen to this next point, right? That's one way in which I catch everybody's attention. Or I say, guys, this next thing that I'm going to discuss is very important. So first of all, everything that I put in my presentation is important, but then I keep foretelling people that, listen, this is something which is very important. Now pay attention. So that kind of brings people's attention back. So when I say, listen, guys, listen to this point, or I say, guys, this is something which is very important, please listen to it. Or, I'll say, okay, the next thing that I'm going to present is something that has really helped me in my career. That's the way in which I keep pulling back people's attention to the presentation. And if you watch the recording, you would have seen that I've done that many times through this presentation also. Okay. So to summarize my answer, number one, make your content to the point. Make your presentation concise, for which you need to understand the objective, for which you need to understand how to make your content, right? So attend that particular session. Number two, you can use this particular trick of saying these things like, listen, the next point is very, very important. Listen to this one, the next. So build hype around the point before you kind of share that particular point. And this is called catchphrases. You can use these catchphrases to catch people's attention. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Another good question, Abhinav Prasad. When I start to do eye contact, I find few people are busy with their mobiles. I start feeling low. It affects my presentation. Any tips and tricks on that? What a nice question. Very, very important question again. First of all, If you are presenting to any of your juniors, right, your team members or juniors, or if you're doing a training program, please set the rule very, very clear that everybody needs to keep their mobiles away and people can't look into their mobiles. If you are presenting to your juniors, you have the authority to make those rules or suggestions very clear to them right at the start so that people don't do it. If you are presenting to your peers, seniors, or other stakeholders like your customers, unfortunately, you can make suggestions like we said that please don't do this, but you can't enforce that particular thing. You need to go back to number one, have very little expectation from your audience. So from today onwards, before you make your presentation, you are mentally going to prepare yourself by thinking that my audience is going to be on their phone. I'm not going to expect them to really pay attention to what I'm saying, because that's the way audiences are now. I don't have a choice. So number one, I'm going to prepare. That's what I'm going to do. Number two thing is that if you have 15 people in the audiences, I'm sure not everybody is on their mobile. So if people on their mobile, if you say probably have 6 to 7 people that are not on the mobile, ensure that you're making eye contact with those people when you're presenting, right? So that kind of builds your confidence a little more. Now, if you tell me you have 15 people in the audience, all 15 are on the mobile. The third thing that you can do is just stop your presentation and say, tell them very honestly that, listen guys, it's very difficult for me to present if I don't even know whether I have your attention or not. So guys, finish whatever you all have to do on your mobile, and then I will restart what I have to restart. So that is your third suggestion, of course, depending on the seniority of the people, depending on who you're dealing with, right? So these are the kind of 3 points. Number one, lower your expectations, expect people to be busy, expect them to be distracted. That will mentally prepare you better so that you don't get demotivated. Number two, of the 15 people, concentrate then on the 5 or 6 people that are actually making eye contact. Don't look at the others till they start looking at you. That's number two. Number three, like I suggested with your juniors, ensure that you set the rules down. You can't do that with peers, seniors, or other stakeholders. And number four, if you feel everybody is doing that, you may stop your presentation and respectfully tell them that, listen guys, this is distracting me and I'm unable to get my point across. So if kindly it's possible for you all to do whatever you all are doing later, please do it, right? So beyond this, there is nothing else can be done to this particular question. And again, I go back, when you keep making your presentations better and better and better, keep making your content better, present better, you will catch people's attention a lot more than you're doing right now. Abhinav Prasad, thank you very much for your question. Okay, now, to keep questions alive, what type of questions will help? I'm not, Uday Singh, I'm not clear on what your question is. So you could if you're here still, you can re-clarify your question. So yeah, you can do that. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Abhinav, I'm going to answer a few other, we have, a few other questions. I'm going to answer them first. Gaurav Maheshwari has a question where he says, how can we create attention when people are busy in their mobiles or somewhere else? I think I've answered this particular question, so I'm not going to answer it again. How to control nervousness, I think I told you we have an entire class on this particular thing, so please attend that particular class. I've given you the one main tip already as an answer earlier, so thank you very much. Yes, how to give it, Anil Kavuri has a question where he says, how to give technical presentations with huge data interpretation, especially in front of seniors and bigger clients. Again, need to attend some of the other classes to get a deeper understanding of this thing, especially the class on content and structuring, because that's going to answer most of your questions of how to present, not just technical, but any kind of information. You need to know that. You need to understand that. Otherwise, what happens is, even if you become a good presenter, it will be like you being a good actor in a bad movie, right? That is what will happen. You'll be a good actor in a bad movie if your presentation is not good. So you need to learn the art of doing that. That's why we have a class on that. Anil, just to give you one kind of thing that I have observed over the years, especially when we are presenting to senior as technical people, what we tend to do is we fill in our particular presentations with technical details that the business heads and the seniors don't really want to know, right? It is not something which is their big priority, and we fill in our presentations with stuff like that, which is not required. So that's what I've seen, because we are technical people. We really feel that we need to fill in. And what we need to do is we need to understand what is it that the audience is looking for in this particular presentation. If it's a smaller audience, you can try to talk to them in advance, where you really try to understand from them what is it that you're looking for from this particular presentation, and do that kind of interview at least with the main stakeholders of that, to understand that, because we've seen people just copy pasting tons of technical data which are irrelevant for that particular presentation, and then of course their audience is bored with it, right? So attend the session, but that's my one or two tips to you immediately of how to deal with it. Speak to the stakeholders involved. That's very, very important. Try to understand what their expectations are. Often your seniors want to look at stuff from a business end more than a technical end of what's happening, because they trust your technical expertise on it. Understand your objective, understand how to structure your content. Okay. Now, Maya C has a question. Sometimes there are presentations by different people. Some people pick the best points from the previous speaker and make a wonderful speech, including those and adding more points to it. Maya, I think I've answered this question earlier. I think a similar question was asked right at the start by somebody that said that, you know, somebody listens to all five and then presents better. The thing that we discussed there is you need to get an understanding of how to build content. You need to get a understanding of how to structure your presentations properly. I think the one big thing to pick from these people, Maya, is the fact that they're very good listeners. Okay, that they're really listening to the different points of people, really making a note of that, and then adding their own flavor in a way to that and presenting that further. It's not something easy to do, but they managed to do it. Anyway, right? The other thing that I have noticed, for example, is a lot of us are not that willing to express our views during, you know, saying meetings and stuff like that. We just sit quietly, where these people, they actually pick up points from other people, they add their own flavor and actually express them out, when we are busy just keeping quiet and getting scared in that particular situation, because we're so uncomfortable with any kind of public speaking. Even if it's just like a discussion and a table, a group discussion, we're not comfortable doing that. We're so nervous that those points are not coming to our head, right? So yeah, that's my suggestion to you. Great question, Maya. Answered this question earlier. How not to clutter your points in mind so that the presentation doesn't look totally disorderly. Okay. Now, Maya, we're going to do two classes on this, which you should attend, which will answer this question. And I'll give you something to read as well, right? Because I don't want you to feel that we're asking you to attend every class for something. We're going to do a class which is called a communication class, which is the McKenzie pyramid model of communication, which is, in my opinion, one of the best models of communicate. Even if you don't attend the class, scout the internet for it, read about the McKenzie pyramid model of communication. That is one great way in which you can structure your communication. This particular presentation that you've seen, that I did, more or less follows that model of doing it, right? If you see, we had 3 points and 3 points under each one of those points. Is very, very clear what we're talking about, very clear for the audience as well. So this presentation, you can watch the recording. You can watch this as a self-paced class again, and see how this presentation was structured in a simple way, right? And the broad structure to it was, what is this topic? Why is this topic so important? And how do you get good at this topic? Only 3 parts it had. And the how do you get good at this topic was again divided into the big three, the 3 big points. That's the way we structured it, largely around the concept of the McKenzie pyramid model of communication. We have a class on that. If you can't attend the class, please go online and research on that. That is something that will really help you in getting full clarity. Besides that, Maya, the other thing to do is understanding the objective of your presentation, right? That becomes extremely important for you to make any presentation wherein the points are clear in your head. I promise you, if you attend the class on structuring your presentations well and the McKenzie, you will never face this problem again. And in all situations in your life, you will be extremely confident of your thought and how to go about structuring it. Also, when you're talking at home to your children, you will know how to speak in a very structured way if you attend these 2 things, because that's the kind of value this will bring in, exactly the kind of value that you got here. Till then, read the McKenzie pyramid model of communication. Okay, Maya? Arunima Kamat, I think this question is from Krishna Negi. Why can't we ask people to come close to the monitor and then present? Yeah, what does this mean? Yeah. Bring the audience closer to the screen. Well, see, if you can, Krishna, if you can do that, if you can bring your audience closer to the screen, great. You know, that's something which is amazing. Please do that. Bring your audience to the screen. As long as you, the presenter, is very close to the audience, that's all that happens. Don't be distant from your audience, because if you're distant, your message is not going to reach them as powerfully. So be as close. I'm so used to being close to the audience that even on a video call, I tend to come closer to the screen, right? I'm that used to coming closer to my audience, right? So that's what you're supposed to do. From Debraj Bhaumik, does your bad presentation affect your career in a certain way? Good question. Debraj, the truth of the matter is that presentation skills, like any other skill, requires practice. 9 out of 10 people are not born with this particular skill, right? And anybody that you see that today is a pro at presenting is a pro at presenting because they have practiced a lot over the years, right? So again, I'm giving a example of a politician. Please don't go into the political aspect of it, right? So on a Children's Day kind of web conference, something, one of the children asked Prime Minister Modi. They said, Prime Minister Modi, how are you such a good public speaker, right? You do such a good job of public speaking. You're considered one of the best public speaking politicians on the planet almost. So how is that? So the answer that he gave to that was, he said I have been public speaking every day of my life ever since I was 26 or 27 year old, right? Every day of my life I was speaking in front of people. He said, I came into public life close to 20 years back. So before I even came into public life, I had close to 20 years of experience of speaking in front of people every day of my life, right? And that's how I got better at it. So I didn't get better at it magically. And if you practice public speaking or any other skill consistently, you will also get better at it, right? And this is the advice everybody is going to give you. Now, what happens is, towards the start of doing this particular practice, like anything, when you drive for the first time, first few times, you're not going to be good at it, right? But you can't give up on that immediately. Exactly like that, in our head we have some misconception that we are supposed to come to the workplace and without any training and without any practice we're supposed to start presenting well, right? It's like if you're an engineer, it's like knowing everything engineering without going to college, right? Magically expecting that. No, this is a skill like anything else. There is a lot of learning to be done. There are lots of sessions like this and practice that needs to be done. So you cannot be caught in this thought of saying that, does a bad presentation impact my career? Well, it may have some small impact on you, there is no doubt about it, but the bigger thing is, use the next 2 years to actually practice a lot, and you'll have some bad presentation that may impact you a little bit, but after 2 years you will be good at it. And then, say if you're 40 years old and if you're going to work till you're 55 or 60, you have another 15 or 20 years to enjoy the fruits of the efforts that you take over the next 2 years, right? So if you're, say, 26-year-old and you get scared and you avoid making presentations, till the time you're 55, you won't be good at making presentation. But if you're 26 and you say, okay, the next 2 years, I will fail, but I will get better. So there's a very nice quote that says, fail faster, succeed sooner, right? Don't get scared of failing. Go fail. It may have a small impact on your career, but it's not as bad an impact on your career as you think. And for the next 2 years, you're using every presentation, like we discussed during the class, as a work in progress. That's the logic, and that's the way mindset that we're going to have. Okay, Debraj, I hope that answered your question. Okay, how to maintain an energetic tone throughout the presentation, right? Good. The way to maintain an energetic tone, Abhinav, is by being extremely conscious of the fact that you need to be energetic during a presentation. Being energetic does not mean that you copy somebody else. We made that clear. Do not try to copy anybody else. Be yourself. But as you are yourself, bring in more energy when you're talking, right? It's that simple. So if, for example, if you are talking to your child about something that you feel passionately about, right? How would you talk to them, right? If you talk to your child, or if you're talking to somebody that you're really comfortable with, you're the same person, but yet you're speaking with more energy, right? You're not becoming another person. You don't even realize that you're putting in more energy there. So to start with, when you're presenting, just be more conscious of the fact that you need to put in more energy throughout the presentation. You need to give it a little more about yourself, and hopefully you feel about your work and you feel about the topic that you're presenting as well. You feel that much passion towards that as well, and automatically that tone will tend to come out. Okay. Okay, I think the questions are over. No other questions over. Um, Okay, no, the questions are not over. Great. Biswajit Das asked the question. Some people I saw rubbing their palms while presenting. Is it right or wrong? Biswajit, no problem. Rub your palms. Not a problem at all. I hope a nice little genie comes out of it when you rub your palms a lot. Listen, the truth of the matter is a lot of people have given you terrible advice, terrible feedback on how to present well. If you read most of the books on this subject, they're not practical books. They'll say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. People don't care whether you're rubbing your palms or not. What people care about is, are you speaking sense? Are you speaking that sense in a structured way? Are you speaking in a nice energetic way that catches my attention? These are the few things that people care about. Of course, like I said, it's important to keep your hands in front of your stomach or chest. So it's important to keep it so that, because if you don't keep it there, it will impact your posture. You won't look nice again. And people often, when they're presenting, don't know what to do with your hands. So keep them in front of your stomach or chest. Even if you're rubbing them, there's no problem. My other suggestion to you is, a lot of people say that, should I carry a pen in my hand? I'm like, listen, I leave it up to you whether you want to carry a pen or not. But if you're carrying a pen, don't just continuously move it around where people are going to get distracted of it. But if you like carrying something in your hand, and if you carry it, no problem. What people care about is not what is in your hand, but whether you're speaking sense or not. And what happens is, we concentrate on all the other things, but we don't concentrate on structuring our presentation, reducing our nervousness. We don't concentrate on all these things that we're supposed to, and we start concentrating on the small little things. So Biswajit, great question. Don't worry about it. Rub your hands, no problem. Okay. Now, I think I dismissed one question. I think I've Sunkavali Venkata. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. If audiences are distracted, any tips to get them back into the presentation? I already shared those tips. You can use catch phrases like, guys, the next point that I'm going to share is very, very important. You can say something like that. You can say number two. You can say, okay, listen to this next point, guys, and that will catch people's attention. You can say, okay, the next point I have personally found very, very important in my life. So all these things are going to catch people's attention to the content that you have. But inherently, if your content is wrong, inherently, if your content is not structured well, if you don't understand the objective, irrespective of catching people's attention, it's not going to remain there if you're talking about irrelevant stuff. So you need to do a 1-2. Make great content, structure it well, also use these catchphrases to get people's attention. Okay. Now, should a pointer be used during a presentation? Absolutely, Rahul. You should use a pointer during the presentation. If you have a lot of points on your slide, please use that to catch people's attention so that they know exactly what on that particular slide you're taking up. Okay, good question. Vaibhav asks a question, what is the right mindset one should have while making presentation? Okay, develop a work in progress is the right answer in assessment. Okay, what is the right answer? I can't answer that, Vaibhav. You need to answer that yourself. Okay, is rubbing of the palm is not advisable? Amulya, I've answered that question. It doesn't matter whether you rub your palms or not. Don't worry. If you're going to do something obnoxious, if you keep doing this, then that's a problem, definitely, right? But a little bit of rubbing of your palms when you're presenting, I do that all the time. Nobody cares, right? Nobody is paying that much attention to what you're doing anyway. One of the things of presentations is you need to be very careful about what feedback you take from your audience, right? Because a lot of people, it's like if somebody goes for a movie and you ask them, yaar movie kaisi thi, they'll say, अरे यार वो एक गाना थोड़ा कम होना चाहिए था, वो शाहरुख की एक्टिंग थोड़ी अच्छी होनी चाहिए थी. So it's easy for people to give some feedback at the end of every presentation or session, but that doesn't mean that all the feedback they're going to give you is right. So while taking feedback from people when you make a presentation, please take feedback from one, people that really are good at presentation. Number two, people that really care about you. Number three, people who have a historic record of talking sense, right? Because if you take feedback after you make presentation from everyone, they're going to talk exactly like they watched a movie, right? ये थोड़ा और गाना लंबा होता तो अच्छा होता. कतरीना कैफ के थोड़े कच्चे कपड़े और होते तो अच्छा होता. They're going to keep talking something or the other there, right? So that is feedback that is irrelevant to people. So take your advice from people that mean well, take your advice from people that present well, and take your advice from people that generally give great suggestions to you, right? Yeah. Okay, Anil has a question where he says, these are the last two questions I'm going to take up. Anil has a question where he says, I will prepare too much, but during the presentation I'm speaking so by forgetting them. Anil, I've discussed this topic in the class where I said, every person will prepare something, but when he actually comes and presents, it's never going to come out of his mouth in the exact same way. He is going to forget something. And that's why there are 3 presentations for everyone that you make. Number 1, the one that you present, the one that you prepare. Number 2, the one that you present. And number 3, the one that you wish you presented, right? So do not worry about this thing. It is never going to come out perfectly as you rehearsed, or it's never going to come out as you have prepared in your mind. There's always going to be a different version than it. So what I tell people, Anil, is be more or less on point, right? Or in Hindi hum bolte na mota moti, right? Mota moti, you need to be on point and meet your objective. Don't worry about every point coming out in that exact way in which you thought of it, because that is impossible to do. Nobody on this planet can do it that way, including the best of the speakers, right? So don't worry about forgetting one point here or there when it comes to your topics. As long as mota moti you're doing it, by and large you're getting your points across, that's great. Okay. Akib has this thing where he says, I think that presentation slides should have crisp points. We need to explain a lot on those. Is that the correct way, or is there any other way? Okay, Akib, great question. I think the presentation that was made today by me, that was put together by my lovely content team, Arunima Kamat, she put this particular presentation together, and I think she did a fabulous job of it. If you see, it's very image heavy. There are very few points that are on the slides, right? It's not very text heavy, and that's the kind of formula that you should tend to follow, is of having very few points on the slide. Those points are essentially supposed to give you a cue on what to say for it, right? Now, for whatever reason, if you have to fill in your slide with a lot of information, my suggestion, if you have to, it's not recommended, but if you have to do it, when you put on that particular slide, first keep quiet and give your audience 30 seconds to read that slide without explaining them, right? Because you need to remember your audience can read. You don't need to read everything out for them. So if you have a slide, you just tell the audience, guys, I want you all to take 15 seconds or 20 seconds to actually go through this entire slide. So now the audience will start paying attention and actually read and take the effort, right? And not be on their mobiles anymore. So they'll actually read that slide, and then your job as a presenter is not to read out the slide again. Your job is to tell them the key points from that particular information, or give them the key insight. Your job is not to read slides. Your job is to give insights on those particular slides, right? So ideally, don't do it. But if you have to do it, give your audience time to read and then give insights on those particular slides to them. Okay, thank you, Akib, for your question. Okay, just 1 minute. Wait. Yeah, so Shiv, I'll answer the last 2 questions. Okay, so last 2 questions is what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to answer. Some presenters ask on expectations of the program in the beginning. This may be important for training presentations or on calls. This is a good question. Shivan, I think asking the audience's expectation is something which is very important to do in a training program, largely, right? There you should do it because you get an idea of what their expectations are. However, even in that case, the way you do it is, don't just ask them expectations, but because very often they'll give you all kinds of expectations. Ask them, what are your expectations on this topic that I'm going to present, right? On the topic of presentation skills, what are the problems that you have? What are the expectations? And what do you want sorted during these 2 days, if you're going to be them for 2 days, right? So take that particular input from them, and that will help you address those issues, because you just don't want to cover content for the sake of content. You want people to actually get better at the end of it. So very important to take those expectations from your audience in a training scenario. In a regular topic, should you be taking the expectations of the people? It depends on the topic that you're presenting. There's no one rule that I can give you that you need to, whether you take expectations of the audience or not. No, it depends on what you're presenting on. You don't always need to do that. Okay. Lalit Singh, it makes me feel low when my seniors are picking phone during my presentation, but he himself pushing others not to pick calls. How to handle such scenarios, and it makes me non-interested in the presentation. Lalit, you're in a tough spot, my friend. You're in a tough spot. I empathize with you. I understand that it can be very demoralizing for somebody to when you're making a presentation and somebody's picking calls. Now, what can you do? Okay, this may not always work. This is just an idea. I can't assure you whether it's going to work or not, but this is just an idea. If you're in a presentation and somebody picks a call in that same room, okay, stop making your presentation. Now that person often will make this signal. He'll be on a call and he'll say, carry on. And what you do to him, you say, you finish first, right? So let him finish the call first, and you just remain silent till that particular person finishes the call, because you cannot have a situation in a room where you are presenting and somebody is on the phone at the same time. That's going to be very distracting for you. It's going to be very distracting for the rest of the people. So I don't know whether you can apply it, but this is a great idea. I've seen this work multiple times. If somebody picks the phone, what you need to say is just stop making your presentation. He'll ask you to carry on. You say, don't, wait, you finish first. Now, if your senior goes outside to pick a call and come back in, there's nothing that, although it is going to be distracting if he keeps walking in and out, but I don't think that you can do anything about that, right? I think you need to go back to the point of saying is, when you are preparing for your presentation, have very low expectations of it. Ensure that you do that. Don't expect too much from your audience. That will mentally prepare you to make better presentations. Okay. Okay. So with that, we are way past the time of our after class as well. Okay. Thank you very much, my lovely audience, for coming on a Sunday, and especially for all of y'all who have stayed back almost till the end of it. We started at 10 o'clock. It's almost 12:40. And y'all were there till the absolute end of this particular session. Thank you very much for being such a lovely audience. Thank you for asking all these questions that are such important questions. I am really sorry if I haven't been able to answer any of your questions or answer them well enough, because for some questions there are no perfect answers or there are no easy solutions, right? There are just ideas that I can discuss that in your scenario you need to see whether you can apply it. But I can tell you that these are answers that come after years of training people on this subject, and these are as practical answers that you can get on this particular subject. If you please go through the self-paced masterclass, you will get a link of it. Please go through that. If any of you all haven't been able to do the assessments, please, you will get an email on it so you can do it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. I hope to see you next week. Okay, bye. See you. Thank you.